Chapter 240. The Black Hand Mercenary Group's channel exploded again. The four brave players argued endlessly, pointing fingers at each other. In the end, they pointed their fingers at the poor lurker. Why did you have to wait for him to step into the trap? Step my ass. The lurker felt wronged, but there was nothing he could do. After thinking about it carefully, he felt that they were waiting for Gu Fei to step into the trap. In the end, he was caught off guard by Gu Fei's teleportation. Amidst the grumbling, the Black Hand Mercenary Group rushed towards the West Gate. But it was too late. As soon as Gu Fei's group entered the Cloud City, they went straight for the dungeon. The city was crisscrossed, and there were countless routes. How could the Black Hand Mercenary Group find them when they didn't know where they were going? Even though there were a few common guild mission distribution centers, such as the tavern, or places that were related to escort missions, such as the dungeon or the wanted mission office, the Black Hand Mercenary Group's manpower was limited. After witnessing Gu Fei's strength, they didn't dare to split their forces. After searching the city for a while, they finally received bad news from the small guild. The mission had already been declared over. Oh! The students of the Ultimate Class 3, who were waiting at the North Gate, also received the system notification. After completing the double quest, the generous experience reward was instantly distributed to everyone. Many of them leveled up on the spot. White light flashed, and the competitors of the small guild who were waiting for the news not far away were filled with envy. Other than experience, there were also some item rewards that were randomly distributed. Of course, such a large amount of equipment was only given out with blue and white words. But for the students, it was already very valuable. Because the equipment was randomly distributed regardless of your class, the students asked each other and exchanged, causing the people of the small guild to spit again. Solitude under the moon was furious. He returned to the North Gate with a black face. Since the quest had failed, their employment quest had also failed. Also, because they took the system route, the system mercilessly added a 1 to the mercenary group ranking in the mercenary building. In addition, the Black Hand Mercenary Group had set a compensation clause. Not only did Solitude under the Moon return the deposit, but they also paid the fees that they had to pay after the quest was completed. In this way, the students completed the mission and gained experience and equipment. Although the small guild's mission had failed, in the end, they had earned a sum of money. Of course, the Black Hand Mercenary Group was the most depressed. Several of their members had dropped levels and lost money, breaking a record. The mercenary channel was in an uproar at this time, and the leader of the mercenary group, Black Index Finger, also showed great dissatisfaction in his words. As the person in charge of this mission, Solitude under the Moon had failed to complete the mission given to him by the organization and caused a lot of losses. He could not absolve himself from the blame. Qianli is drunk. While Solitude was gnashing his teeth, Gu Fei coincidentally brought the two students to the North City Gate. He was preparing to distribute the equipment to the students again. Yo, you're all here. Gu Fei was quite surprised to see Soliloquy under the moonlight and the players from the smaller guilds still crouching there. Now that the mission was over, what other motives did they have? Gu Fei subconsciously prepared for battle. Teacher. When the students saw that Gu Fei had returned, they all surrounded him, showing off their new equipment. Not bad. Come, follow me over here. There's more. Gu Fei said as he led the students to the warehouse. Seeing that Soliloquy did not seem to have any intention of making a move, he was quite disappointed. The warehouse was filled with the equipment that Gu Fei had obtained from level 0 to level 40. Some were high, some were low, some were good, and some were bad. Now, he took them all out and threw them on the ground. The students screamed and snatched them like crazy, as if they were celebrating the new year. The other players who wanted to come to the warehouse were dumbfounded. They thought that they were being robbed, and none of them dared to go forward. Don't panic, stand in line first. Gu Fei shouted to stop the students' undisciplined behavior. The students lined up, and Gu Fei pointed out a few people to sort the equipment according to their classes. Then, Fa suggested that those who did not receive any equipment from the mission reward would have priority, and everyone agreed. The students went forward one by one to choose their equipment. Although not all of them were satisfied, they were all in high spirits. Moreover, some of the students were over level 30, and some of the students were newbies who had just entered the game. Gu Fei's pile of equipment was put to good use in the end, which made Gu Fei feel very gratified. "Teacher, you're so cool." The students praised sincerely. At the same time, out of gratitude, AFA made an appeal. "Those who got mage equipment just now, take it out for teacher to see if there's anything that teacher needs." The students were all willing, and a few mages took out the equipment from the mission reward for Gu Fei to see. Gu Fei waved his hand without even looking. "There's no need, you guys can keep it for yourselves. Teacher is already level 40, these equipment won't catch his eye." The students were both envious and praising. Unbeknownst to them, Gu Fei's equipment was extremely polarized. His sword, clothes, and shoes were all top grade, but the other small fire-enchanted accessories were all obtained from the Willow Gang in Moonlit Night City, and he had not changed them until now. It was these 3 top-grade equipment that raised Gu Fei's standards. In his opinion, if he wanted to change them, they should be of this level. Otherwise, there was no point in changing them or not. Amidst the students' praises, Gu Fei looked at the time and poured a bucket of cold water on them. "All right, it's getting late. Pack up and go offline." "It's still early, it's only 9. The students were confused. 9 is still early? Have you reviewed today's homework? Have you previewed tomorrow's homework? Did you finish all your homework? Did you check it again? Go offline, all of you, go offline. Students must focus on studying, understand?" Gu Fei said sternly. The students were depressed. However, they did not dare to disobey their teacher. Although he was only a physical education teacher, who could stand it if he asked them to run 8 laps in one lesson? The students went offline to the safe zone in low spirits. Among them, there were some who wanted to play. When they saw that Gu Fei did not continue to watch them, they ran off to play somewhere else. In the end, not long after, Gu Fei's message caught up to them. "Why haven't you gone offline yet? Do you want to run 10 laps? A few of the cunning students wailed. If they had known this would happen, they would not have added the teacher as a friend. Now, even if they deleted it, Gu Fei's friend list would still have your name. He would know if you were online or not at a glance. Even if you were invisible, there were ways to update your profile to check if you were online. The monk could run, but the temple could not. The situation had now been reversed. A few students who wanted to play secretly for a while more went offline helplessly. When Gu Fei saw the students' names turn dark one by one, he used the method of updating his profile to check again. He nodded in relief. It seemed that it was a good idea to have a teacher supervise the students in the game to play harmoniously and healthily. Gu Fei thought as he ran to the wanted mission office. At this time, he had more than 10 PK points on him. He needed to wash them before he could recover. On the PK wanted list, there was a guy with 5 PK points. This made Gu Fei very happy. The last time he encountered such a big shot was the guy who went against the current. Although it was a battle between sorcerers, that battle was quite difficult. Gu Fei preferred this kind of difficult challenge. Without hesitation, Gu Fei accepted the mission and immediately rushed to the mission coordinates. From the location, it seemed to be outside the city. In this kind of situation, people would usually be in a party to level up. It would not waste time and they would be protected by a circle of friends. It was the best of both worlds. For people doing wanted missions, it was a problem. The average person could not complete this kind of mission. On the other hand, Gu Fei was worried that the target's partner was too loyal and entangled with him. In the end, it would cause Gu Fei's PK points to increase instead of decrease. This kind of situation had happened before. After returning from a wanted mission, it would decrease 1 point and increase 3 points. Most of the time, it was because the target's partner was too loyal and wanted to fight to the death with Gu Fei. At this time, it was useless to think too much. Gu Fei carefully packed his equipment, replenished his HP and mana, and set off in the direction of the coordinates. The coordinates changed every minute, but the displacement was very small. Gu Fei was even more certain that the other party was farming monsters to level up. Out of the city gate, he went all the way south, approaching step by step. Gu Fei estimated the current coordinates and knew the general area of the other party. It was a place Gu Fei had never been to before. Speaking of which, Gu Fei had to farm monsters 20 levels above him to do wanted missions all around Cloud City. Basically, he was the only one who had been to places that others had never been to. Therefore, there was only one possibility for this kind of area that even he had never set foot in: a leveling area that was higher than level 60. Gu Fei was excited. It had been a long time since he met an expert. Nowadays, wanted missions always ran into noobs below level 30. It was as if the level 40 heroes had washed their hands of the game. Who was this hero today? He was actually able to kill monsters that were of a higher level than him? He was truly a man that was rarely seen in Cloud City. Gu Fei advanced towards the coordinates, and the surrounding scenery gradually became unfamiliar. After passing through 2 hills along the main road, his eyes suddenly opened up. A quiet lake, a dense forest, and a harmonious village. The system notified him that this place was called Soyun Village. This was the naming style of place names in parallel worlds. In Cloud City, the word cloud was the main character. Therefore, mountains, trees, villages, and rivers would all have this main character. Then a random word would be thrown on top of it, and it would become a place name. It was very simple and clear, and there was no need to think. Soyun Village. Gu Fei, who often looked up information about leveling areas to find the next leveling area, had accidentally seen this place name. This village had a huge similarity with the luminous village outside of Moonlit Night City. Both villages were rich in werewolves. However, the difference was that the werewolves in Luminous Village lived in harmony like humans and were classified as quest NPCs. On the other hand, the werewolves in Luminous Village lived in their original state. They were extremely vicious, and it was convenient for players to mercilessly hunt them down. This was a leveling area for level 70 players. Chapter 241. There was someone who could fight monsters 30 levels higher than him. Was it a team or an individual? If it was an individual, Gu Fei would have to admire him. But then he thought about it. He had fought with all the top players in Cloud City, and he couldn't tell who had the ability to fight monsters 30 levels higher than him. Thin Waist Dance? Drifting? Of course, the 2 heroes of the 5 rogues were the most likely. And these 2 were easy to verify. Gu Fei sent a message to each of them. He went straight to the point and asked, "Do you have any PK points?" Heroes were heroes, and their PK points were like their 10th piece of equipment. Both of them answered in unison, yes. Gu Fei was immediately alerted. What time? Drifting answered honestly. Thin Waist Dance was a girl, so she continued to ask, "What do you want?" "Wash my PK points." "I'm afraid I'll get someone I know," Gu Fei replied. "I'll kill you if you dare to get me," Thin Waist Dance replied. Gu Fei didn't argue with her. Just in case, he shouted in the mercenary channel. The young master of the Han family was known to be someone who never cared about PK points. Mentioning PK points to him was like giving him a terminal illness. He spat in the channel and went silent. The others all said that they didn't have PK points. The masters didn't ask any more questions because it wasn't the first time Gu Fei asked this question. Ever since the incident where Yutian Shenming mistakenly took Gu Fei would remind them to wash their PK points as soon as possible. Otherwise, if they happened to get the PK points, it would be difficult for them to cooperate with each other. Now that he was sure that this master who was 30 levels higher than him wasn't his friend, Gu Fei walked back to the village full of fighting spirit. In the forest, Gu Fei could vaguely see the shadows of a few werewolves. The parallel world was a game with a magical background, so there were many scary monsters. However, due to the fact that it was a holographic simulation, players would need to be mentally prepared to face all sorts of monsters with their mouths wide open. The designers agreed that they needed to give the players a step-by-step process, so the monsters would gradually evolve from low to high levels into magical monsters. To put it simply, the level of the monsters in the parallel world depended on their appearance. The higher the level, the more powerful they were, and the uglier and more terrifying they looked. In order to come up with this evolution design, They went overboard at the beginning, creating a bunch of cute cats and dogs in the most basic leveling area, which caused a lot of criticism from the players. Werewolves were often the protagonists of horror movies and were ranked at level 70. It could be seen that the designer had put a lot of thought into it. Gu Fei was too far away from the werewolves to attract their attention. Looking at the coordinates again, the other party should be in the village without a doubt. There was a quiet lake in front of the village, and a large wooden bridge spanned across it, bringing people who came from the mountain path into the village. Gu Fei walked on the bridge towards the village, but when he was halfway there, 2 werewolves suddenly appeared out of nowhere and swayed on the bridge. Gu Fei had fought the werewolves once in the church in Moonlit Village outside of Moonlit Night City. Although it was a short fight, Gu Fei was clearly no match for them. If he hadn't fulfilled the quest condition and let the werewolves run away, he would have died under their claws that day. These were all NPCs in the leveling area, so of course they wouldn't run away after getting injured. If they fought like this, even though Gu Fei was 10 levels higher than before, he knew that he was still no match for them. Gu Fei was invincible in the game because of his reaction speed, which were also werewolf strengths. Gu Fei recalled the werewolf's strength and could already make an accurate assessment. If he had the confidence to challenge them, he would have come here to level up a long time ago. Moreover, Gu Fei was only considering a 1v1 situation. There were 2 werewolves blocking the bridge, so there was no need to even think about it. Gu Fei stood on the bridge for a long time, but the 2 beasts didn't seem to have any intention of leaving. Helpless, Gu Fei could only retreat. He couldn't walk on the bridge, so he could only take a detour along the lake shore. That way, he would be able to enter the village. Returning to the other end of the bridge, Gu Fei decided not to take the main path in order to save trouble. He directly jumped from the bridge to the lakeshore below. As soon as he landed, he heard a cry behind him. Gu Fei jumped to the side, and when he turned around he saw a werewolf jump out from under the bridge, fiercely pouncing towards him. He didn't know how the werewolf had wandered to the bottom of the bridge, but Gu Fei's vision was blocked by the bridge, so he naturally didn't know. At this moment, he jumped down from the side of the bridge and quickly entered the werewolf's attack range. Without hesitation, he attacked Gu Fei. Gu Fei didn't panic. When the werewolf pounced at him again, he quickly chanted a spell and retreated 5 meters. The werewolf's claw once again missed, and it bared its teeth and continued to chase. Gu Fei, who had originally been prepared to run away after opening up this distance, suddenly had an idea when he saw the werewolf's skills. Instead of retreating, he advanced, wielding the night streamer, and met the werewolf head-on with a dual flame flash. The flames burned the werewolf's fur, and it roared even more fiercely. However, its skills were still the same. Gu Fei dodged and counterattacked, but he didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. This werewolf was only slightly faster than him, which was why Gu Fei had stayed behind to fight it out after seeing its skills. But he also found it strange. This werewolf was incomparable to the werewolf he had fought in Luminous Village, be it in terms of strength or speed. Most people would think that it was because they were stronger, but Gu Fei was an expert in this field. He had made this judgment directly from his opponent's skills and not from comparing it with his own. Gu Fei had forgotten that the werewolf he had fought in the chain mission wasn't an ordinary werewolf. Adrian had used the Wolf King's tooth to transform into a werewolf overlord. Although its strength couldn't compare to a purebred Wolf King, it wasn't something that ordinary werewolf underlings could compare to. Gu Fei had naturally overestimated the werewolf's strength by comparing it to a werewolf. This was just another oversight from Gu Fei's carelessness in game settings. Although he wasn't at a disadvantage in terms of skills, the werewolf's defense and HP were truly terrifying. Gu Fei's strongest move, Dual Flame Flash, had already been released 3 times in a row. He could even smell the smell of the werewolf's burnt fur. However, the werewolf's agility was not the slightest bit weak. It continued to roar, tearing and biting at Gu Fei. Saliva dripped from its mouth, and from time to time, spittle would fly everywhere. It was truly disgusting. Gu Fei couldn't do anything. He couldn't even use teleportation to increase the distance between them, so he could only continue to deal with the werewolf patiently. As this continued, not only did the werewolf not show any signs of losing, but the burn wounds from the dual flame flash gradually healed, and the smell of roasted meat gradually disappeared. This was the werewolf's regeneration. Gu Fei felt as if he had just woken up from a dream. No wonder the werewolf didn't die after so long, and was even more spirited. It wasn't because the werewolf's HP was high, but because of its amazing regeneration ability. Gu Fei's Nightstreak sword was only a level 70 equipment, and the werewolf was also a level 70 training monster. Although the sword was exquisite, Gu Fei didn't add any intelligence or strength. He only relied on his equipment to attack. No matter what, in front of a level 70 werewolf, it wouldn't be able to strike fear into players' hearts. The 3 dual flame flash didn't instantly kill the werewolf. The Nightstreak sword's physical attack, which Gu Fei couldn't fully activate due to its coefficient, was really nothing. The amount of HP I cut isn't as much as the werewolf's recovery. This kind of helpless situation had finally happened to Gu Fei. In this kind of situation, the werewolf couldn't kill it and had no chance to run. If it were anyone else, they could only wait to be killed by the monster. Unfortunately, the werewolf's opponent was Gu Fei. He had completed the Night Light Village werewolf chain quest, so he just so happened to have a weapon that could restrain werewolves, the Holy Flame Baptism. The Flame Baptism itself was an outdated weapon that wasn't even level 30. Of course, there were higher level weapons like it that had enchantments. Gu Fei hadn't eliminated it all this time because it had been baptized by the village chief in the quest. It had become holy and had a special ability to prevent regeneration. This ability was completely useless normally, but it was the werewolf's nemesis. By the time Gu Fei reacted, he quickly put away the Nightstreak sword and pulled out the Flame Baptism. The Flame Baptism's attack was even more unsightly than the Nightstreak sword. Its physical attack alone wasn't even enough to break through the werewolf's defense. Its attack mainly relied on enchantments. Unexpectedly, the Flame Baptism displayed an irresistible momentum in front of the werewolf. A single slash would immediately leave a wound on the werewolf's body. It looked like a burn, but the burn faintly emitted a silver light, much more resplendent than a wound caused by a fire. The enchantment then ignited a fire on the wound, and the smell of barbecued meat was even stronger than before. The werewolf was clearly in much more pain than when it was attacked by the Nightstreak sword. Its cries were even more mournful. Gu Fei didn't hold back at all. One slash after another, and before long, the werewolf fell to the ground. Gu Fei let out a long breath. It turned out that this werewolf wasn't that strong. It was mainly because he didn't know how to kill it. Looking at the werewolf's regeneration speed, even level 70 players would have trouble leveling here if they didn't have a way to counter the werewolf's regeneration. Speaking of which, the EXP wasn't just for show. As expected of a monster that was 30 levels higher than him, Gu Fei was full of confidence. After replenishing his life force and magic power, he returned to the bridge and walked resolutely towards the 2 werewolves at the end of the bridge. In the Parallel Worlds Operations Department, the members of the supervisory team were happily announcing to Yi Xiaowu, "Chairman Yi, the guy you've been paying attention to killed a werewolf that was 30 levels higher than him today." From the perspective of the supervisory team, Gu Fei's actions didn't violate any rules. However, this guy had made Yi Xiaowu, the designer, helpless and confused. How interesting. Chapter 242. Yi Xiaowu had some foresight about Gu Fei's ability to fight monsters that were 30 levels higher than him. This was because the level 70 werewolf's greatest strength lay in its regenerative ability. Gu Fei had already obtained a weapon that could restrain the regenerative ability in the chain quest. Coupled with the fact that he had put all his points into agility, his speed was not much worse than a level 70 werewolf's. In addition, Gu Fei's skills had already been known to Yi Xiaowu when he was beating up others at level 0. It could be said that Gu Fei was the werewolf's nemesis. Yi Xiaowu was a little surprised that he had waited until today to find trouble with the werewolves. His colleagues in the monitoring group saw that they did not see the classic expression that the player Qinli Drunk brought to Yi Xiaowu, so they all went back to work resentfully. Yi Xiaowu was really helpless. He could only secretly rejoice that this Qinli Drunk did not seem to be a gaming maniac. Otherwise, with the enthusiasm of professional players who played online for more than 10 hours a day, he would be able to beat other players by at least 5 levels. Back to the game. Gu Fei confidently re-entered the bridge, crossed the lake, and went straight to the other end. The two werewolves were still foolishly poking at the other end of the bridge. Gu Fei evaluated the strength of the werewolf underlings. He could barely deal with 2 of them. Although he needed to concentrate more and attack more carefully, it was more interesting this way. At that moment, he did not think of any way to defeat them one by one. He directly rushed forward with the baptism of fire and fought fiercely with the 2 werewolves at the end of the bridge. During this time, he also did some experiments. He used the baptism of fire and the night streamer alternately. Later, the experiment proved that only the damage caused by the baptism of fire could not be regenerated, while the damage caused by the night streamer was calculated separately. The werewolves continued to use regeneration to make up for this part of the damage. Gu Fei did not give up so quickly. The permanent wound left by the baptism of fire attracted his attention. He tried to use the night streamer's attack on this wound, and the result was gratifying. This kind of attack that sprinkled salt on the wound could not be regenerated, and even its defense became very weak. Gu Fei chanted Dual Flame Flash, and the Night Stream Light Sword's Material Magic Dual Strike exploded together. The werewolf's cry was unprecedentedly mournful, and he fell even faster. However, although it sounded easy, it was actually not easy to accurately hit such a narrow wound. One must know that the werewolf's speed was above Gu Fei's. Gu Fei's method of defeating the 2 werewolves was even less effective than the baptism of flames. This gave Gu Fei an unprecedented sense of challenge, and he continued to use this method to challenge the werewolves. NPCs were NPCs after all. After killing a few of them, Gu Fei's expertise helped him gradually grasp the werewolves' attack patterns. After everything became predictable, it was much easier for Gu Fei to accurately hit a knife wound. His mind was far less focused than before, and the Windchaser emblem's coordinates had been refreshed countless times. This finally woke Gu Fei up, and he remembered why he had come here. He hurriedly opened the emblem and saw that the coordinates had moved slightly, but he was still within the village's range. After all, the werewolves were waiting to be killed in this village every day. It was rare to see an expert that could kill monsters 30 levels higher than him. Gu Fei hurriedly put down the werewolf in his hand and continued to run towards the coordinates. The layout of Suiyun village was no different from a normal village in the game. It was only because it had become a werewolf's lair that everything seemed to have declined and desolate. The village was overgrown with weeds and dead trees, giving off a dark and decaying aura. As Gu Fei walked along the village's small path, a werewolf would jump out from the dilapidated walls and ambush him from time to time. Gu Fei's pace wasn't fast as he fought the enemy. Finally, the Windchaser emblem's coordinates were only a wall away from Gu Fei. Gu Fei calmed himself down and ate half a bread and half an apple to replenish his life force and magic power. He then carefully observed his surroundings and made sure that he wouldn't be harassed by any werewolves if he circled around this small wall. He then picked up the dark streamer sword and slowly walked over. He had just turned around the wall when he saw half a person's body disappear from a nearby corner. Gu Fei hurriedly chased after him. There were no werewolves in this area, nor were there any corpses of dead werewolves on the ground. Gu Fei was somewhat puzzled, but he didn't stop walking. He stretched his neck over to the corner of the wall and saw the back of a person. Gu Fei hurriedly rushed out, but his feet suddenly tightened and his body froze. The figure slowly turned around and grinned at Gu Fei. "So it's you," Gu Fei said. "Hee hee, it's rare that you still remember me." The other person laughed. How could Gu Fei not remember? Remnant Dream was dead. Apart from Non-Smiler, this was the second person that Gu Fei had officially hunted down in order to take back the Sword Demon's frostbite memories. This person was reportedly a member of a trash organization that specialized in destroying other people's equipment. That day, Gu Fei was also one of their targets. However, after the incident with the Sword Demon, they were counterattacked by Gu Fei. After that, Gu Fei had been hoping that this group of bad people would actively take revenge on him, but there was no news of them. Even the act of destroying other people's equipment had become a lot more depressed. They were far less diligent than when they first appeared. The sword demon had been looking for this group of people for some time, but he hadn't found anything. Remnant Dream hadn't even answered yet. Several people ran out from behind the other end of the wall. In one breath, they ran over. The person in front shouted, "Hurry up and do it. What nonsense are you talking about?" Next to him, a person said proudly, "Don't panic. I'm now equipped with equipment with the effect of hunting traps. The duration is as long as 54 seconds. Talk faster. It's no problem to chat a little longer. If you can't step on the trap, what's the point of waiting for so long?" His companion despised him. "The problem is that he stepped on it, right?" The person continued to be proud and announced to everyone, "There are 37 seconds left." Gu Fei glanced at them and smiled. "Yo, Calabash Brothers, it's you guys." These were the people who had helped Remnant Dream to encircle and kill Gu Fei behind the Thieves' Guild. On that day, they had also been dealt with by Gu Fei. 31 seconds. The guy who set the trap ignored Gu Fei's taunts and accurately grasped the duration of the trap. "So fierce. Even the werewolves couldn't kill you, but now you're out of ideas." Remnant Dream sneered. Although there were still about 20 seconds left to talk, a long night was fraught with trouble. Remnant Dream's goal was to kill Gu Fei and drop his level. He wanted to drop Gu Fei's equipment. He definitely didn't want to chat with Gu Fei. At this time, Gu Fei had more than 10 PK points on him. If he died, he would directly drop 3 levels. Moreover, PK points were always closely related to the probability of equipment dropping. With Gu Fei's PK points, the equipment he dropped would definitely be very extravagant. It was even possible for him to be naked. Remnant Dream's group, who specialized in killing and robbing people, were naturally quite familiar with this situation. Today's opportunity could be said to be their dream. There was nothing else to say. The hunting trap only restricted the movement of the players. It did not prevent them from attacking. Although Remnant Dream hated Gu Fei for a long time, he also knew that this guy's melee skills were not low. Therefore, he did not rashly move forward. The sorcerer readied an area of effect spell, the warrior readied charge, and the archer readied snipe. All of them were using skills that could not be dodged without moving. "Go to hell." Remnant Dream Death grinned. He was just waiting for his brothers to make a move and beat Gu Fei up. Unexpectedly, Gu Fei smiled calmly. He raised his sword and pointed to the other side, saying, "Teleport, move." "Huh, teleport?" The person who laid the trap laughed loudly. Although teleport was the most powerful movement skill, just the word move meant that this skill would be blocked by the hunting trap. How could it be moved? Who would have thought that Gu Fei had already appeared behind a certain person in a flash, teleporting much faster than the lurker could speak? The person behind him did not react at all. Gu Fei had already placed his sword across his neck and patted him lightly with his other hand, saying, "You're right. If you don't step into the trap, it will be useless." What? Everyone was shocked. They looked towards the corner of the wall. The hunting trap, that had been artificially buried in the ground, had already broken out. However, Gu Fei's movements were normal. Could it be that he had dodged the trap the moment it popped out? What kind of reaction was this? Everyone was shocked. The trap was buried in the ground. This kind of cover was done by the players themselves. It reduced the speed at which the trap popped out. Moreover, Gu Fei's reaction speed was much faster than a normal person's, so he was able to dodge it in an instant. Actually, it was easy to tell whether or not someone was trapped in the trap. At this time, everyone reacted and looked towards Gu Fei's feet. They only saw that the Dark Knight spirit robe that dragged the ground had blocked both of Gu Fei's feet. They couldn't see anything at all. Everyone angrily scolded Gu Fei for being despicable. He clearly didn't fall into the trap but was still acting. Gu Fei laughed. "No matter how despicable I am, I still can't compare to you guys." As he said this, his eyes flashed and he killed the person with the sword at his neck. The others had all fought against Gu Fei before and knew how strong he was. Although they had the advantage in numbers, they didn't have the upper hand. At this time, they all wanted to preserve the seeds of revolution and ran in different directions. Gu Fei flew into the crowd to get rid of this group of people. He didn't think that they wouldn't even fight him and would just run away. Gu Fei didn't know any cloning skills, so he could only raise his hand and use a grenade to kill the one with the lowest HP. The others were left to run, while Gu Fei raised his sword and chased after Remnant Dreams. Chapter 243. As a thief, Remnant Dream's speed was still very fast after using Quickstep. He turned around and disappeared into the corner of the wall. However, Gu Fei's body was full of stats, and the shoes he wore were also much better than the average person's. His speed was not any slower than Remnant Dream's. He quickly caught up and stared at Remnant Dream's back. Remnant Dream was very anxious, very anxious. Quickstep wasn't the same as stealth. There was still a cooldown. He relied on this skill to keep a distance from Gu Fei, but Gu Fei's basic speed was obviously based on his stats and equipment. If this continued, he would be the one to lose. In reality, stealth was the best way to avoid being chased. However, according to the information he had, stealth was even more ineffective against Gu Fei. Little did he know that as long as thieves used stealth and stuffed their heads into the ground like ostriches, they would be fine without looking at Gu Fei. However, Remnant Dream didn't know this. When he saw that Gu Fei didn't chase after anyone but him and was extremely fast, he could only cry in his heart. Gu Fei followed closely behind. He knew that catching up was inevitable. However, he thought of a plan for Remnant Dream: stealth and hide among the werewolves. This was what Gu Fei didn't understand. Remnant Dream and the others were very familiar with the terrain of this werewolf village and the habits of the werewolves. Sneak up to the werewolves? That was impossible. According to the system's explanation, werewolves were non-humans. They had a wolf's keen sense of smell and hearing. Even if their range of perception couldn't compare to their vision, they could still see a few meters around them. Stealth? If he couldn't reach the werewolves, they would pounce on him. Another thief in Remnant Dream's group had done this. As a result, not only did Remnant Dream not dare to rely on the werewolves, he also had to hide from them. In the game, the death penalty for being killed by an NPC or by a player was the same. They would lose levels and equipment. Remnant Dream had no good plan and sent messages to his other brothers for help. When Gu Fei was about to go on a killing spree, this group of brothers had tacitly split up. Then, when they saw Gu Fei aiming for Remnant Dream's head, they once again united. At this time, even if Remnant Dream didn't say anything, she would still help him come up with a countermeasure. Although there were many of them, they did not have the courage to gang up on Gu Fei. However, the incident just now gave them some hints. In a certain empty space in the village, several people each chose a position to stand in, and they had already prepared a path of retreat. They were prepared to use long-range attacks. If they failed, they would find a way to retreat. That way, even if Gu Fei counterattacked, he could only choose one target, just like before. This arrangement only took a few seconds. After the discussion, they informed Remnant Dream of the coordinates of the clearing and where to enter. As they spoke, they went to their respective positions. The lurker didn't stay idle either. He set up another trap along a possible route and informed Remnant Dream of the trap's coordinates so that he wouldn't be the first to step on it. When Remnant Dream Death received the news, she immediately rushed over. At the same time, she estimated the distance from the coordinates and calculated the time needed. After calculating the distance and speed for a while, she found that she had enough time to rush here, so she calmed down. However, Remnant Dream soon realized that he had to take a detour to avoid the werewolves' attack range as he moved forward. He wasn't even taking the shortest route between these 2 points. If he delayed left and right like this, he might not have enough time to sprint. But this was something that couldn't be helped. Remnant Dream Death could only curse while racing against time, focusing on finding a way to save time from the werewolves' positions. As he got closer and closer to the clearing, he rushed out of this dilapidated alley and reached the rendezvous point with his comrades. At this time, Remnant Dream Death's speed had already ended, but victory was in front of him. Remnant Dream Death howled like a werewolf and made a final dash. The moment he hit the line, he took a big step forward. This step took him out of the alley, and at the same time, he stepped over the trap placed at the exit. When he landed, he looked around and couldn't see his brothers. But Remnant Dream Death knew that they were just hiding deep enough so that they could launch a surprise attack. He didn't make a sound and continued to run forward in a panic. "He's coming!" Remnant Dream Death's companions, who were hiding in the dark, saw him rush out of the alley and thought to themselves, "Get ready!" As long as someone came out of the alley, it would be the time for them to attack. The lurker was especially nervous. He desperately hoped that Gu Fei would step into his trap and let him show off for once. Otherwise, the previous time would definitely become an excuse for his brothers to mock and ridicule him. A person suddenly sprang out of the alley with incomparable speed. Everyone's nerves that had been tense for a long time were like a loosened bowstring, and all kinds of attack methods were accurately released in the first instance. The mage's area of effect spells, the archer's shots, and even the warriors and thieves used the throwing method to throw things that could cause damage. Everyone was already prepared that one wave of attack wouldn't be enough to kill Gu Fei. After the first attack was released, the second attack was released smoothly. In the end, the scream did not come from the alley entrance, and the cry was so familiar. Everyone turned to look at the source of the sound. The one who screamed was Remnant Dream Death, and in front of him, pointing a sword at him, was Gu Fei. "What's going on?" Everyone was stunned, and then looked back at the alley entrance. The fire that the mages lit up was still burning, and the attacks of the archers and warriors did not miss. At this time, a group of werewolves squeezed out of the alley entrance. "What's going on?" Everyone began to scream. And at this time, the system's rascality was fully exposed. Even an expert like Gu Fei would not be able to instantly determine where the attack came from when he was suddenly attacked from so many points, but the system just happened to know. It didn't even have the time to search. The werewolf that was hit by the arrow did not hesitate to rush towards the archer's hiding place. The werewolf that was hit by the warrior also rushed towards the corner where he was crouching. The most miserable was the mage. He did not know how many more werewolves were squeezed in the alley behind him, but they were all hit by his area of effect spells. They rushed towards him, one after another. The mage was instantly petrified, and he did not even have the courage to escape. The brother who made the trap was not having it easy either. On one hand, he attacked as an archer, and on the other hand, his trap also set up a trap for the werewolves. But his mere level 40 trap against a level 70 werewolf, when the trap bounced out, it was trampled to pieces by the werewolves. Even so, it was still considered an attack by him, and the consequences were very serious. Even Gu Fei was a little surprised by this scene. He did not know that Remnant Dream had set up another trap in the process of escaping. His teleportation had already finished its cooldown, but because Remnant Dream was more than 5 meters away from him, he could not catch up even if he used it, so he did not use it. He was waiting for Remnant Dream's swift movement to disappear, and he was within 5 meters of him, then he would surprise him with another teleportation. When Remnant Dream rushed out of the alley and into the open space, he had already lost his swift movement. The distance between the two was already closing, and because he wanted to lure Gu Fei out, he purposely slowed down after exiting the alley, wanting to give Gu Fei some hope. So Gu Fei teleported in front of him. As for the large number of werewolves, Gu Fei did not want to see them either. It was a pity that he was only good at fighting, but his gaming knowledge was low. For example, the attack range of the werewolves, Remnant Dream knew, but Gu Fei did not know. If this werewolf was stupid and did not move, then Gu Fei could have avoided his steps, but this werewolf was lively and active, and it had nothing to do. Remnant Dream avoided the werewolf's aggro range, but Gu Fei attracted a bunch of werewolves over. The werewolves were slightly faster than Gu Fei. Along the way, Gu Fei gradually closed in on Remnant Dream, but Gu Fei was being closed in on by the werewolves. But his determination to kill Remnant Dream was very firm, so he did not give up. He waited to use teleportation to catch up to Remnant Dream, and at the same time, pull away from the werewolves. With this move, Gu Fei was not afraid of being caught by the werewolves, so he did not panic. However, Gu Fei had no choice but to reflect upon the current situation. He was too careless. If he did not use teleportation to fly out of the alley, if he ran a few more steps, he would have been greeted by so many attacks. Such a sudden ambush which he did not expect at all. Could he have avoided it? At this time, Gu Fei could not come to a conclusion. It probably depended on his reaction and mental state at the time. That was really close. Gu Fei reflected in his heart, but the scene in front of him made him smile. He entered the werewolves' aggro range, and the will of the werewolves was not very strong. Along the way, many of them had already abandoned him. There were no new werewolves joining them in the dilapidated alley. Some of the old comrades were probably ready to leave, but after being provoked by these guys, they suddenly had a new target and motivation. The small empty space instantly became a werewolf crime scene. Many guys that even Gu Fei did not know where jumped out one by one under the pursuit of the werewolves. The scene was full of crying and tears. The mage was the most miserable. He was surrounded by several werewolves, and in the end he made up his mind and smashed a spell on his head, killing himself. The werewolves were tearing and biting. Who knew if there would be a full corpse after death? The other guys did not have a good ending either. These people obviously did not have the strength to challenge the werewolves, and they were not as fast. They wanted to run, but they were caught in a few steps. A thief ran very fast after using quickness, but he did not pay attention to the back and did not pay attention to the front. He attracted the attention of several werewolves, and just like that, he led a few werewolves further and further away. When the effect of quickness disappeared, in a short while, Remnant Dream's brothers were all killed by the werewolves. He and Gu Fei were now outside of the werewolves' aggro range, so they were very safe. Remnant Dream had no more thoughts this time, and only waited for Gu Fei to give him a quick death. Gu Fei sighed and said, "Forget it, I'll let you go." Remnant Dream's eyes widened, and he heard Gu Fei say, "Go with your brothers." As he said that, he kicked Remnant Dream, causing him to lose his balance and fall into the arms of a werewolf. Chapter 244. The parallel world was a very harmonious world. Although the werewolf's appearance was made to look fierce and tyrannical, and its attack method was very beastly, the visual effect after the attack was still very peaceful. Remnant Dream, who was tightly held in the werewolf's arms, was not bitten to pieces by the werewolf. After 2 bites, the werewolf had already sent him to death. The white light before death was even more dazzling than usual. Remnant Dream had been killed. The probability of equipment dropping, apart from having PK points and not having PK points, was a very big threshold. Every increase in PK points would lower the threshold by a little. Remnant Dream had 5 PK points, which was not low. It was very understandable that he had been killed. Before Remnant Dream died, he had already heard the whoosh whoosh sound of equipment dropping. They were in this business, after all, so they were sensitive and familiar with this sound. Remnant Dream, who was resurrected in the Thieves' Guild, immediately began to look around himself. In the end, he cried bitterly. The regret in his heart could no longer be described in words. Before this operation, his companions had reminded him, who had 5 PK points as bait, whether he should store his equipment in the warehouse or not. But Remnant Dream had always felt that this operation was foolproof. Even if he failed and was taken down by Gu Fei, he would only go to jail. Losing levels and equipment would not happen. Who would have thought that such a side issue would occur? In the end, Gu Fei used him to kill him. The 3 pieces of equipment that Remnant Dream had dropped lay quietly on the ground. After all, the PK points were only 5 points, and the drops were not very spectacular. However, losing levels and equipment was a very satisfying punishment. Gu Fei hurriedly sent a message to Sword Demon to report the good news. The usually calm Sword Demon immediately became excited when he heard the news. "I'll go to the resurrection point right away." Gu Fei silently prayed for Remnant Dream in his heart. Because he knew that Sword Demon's perseverance and willpower were not inferior to his, and he was even more terrifying than Gu Fei in the game. At least if Gu Fei killed people until they went offline, he would not waste time here. But for a guy like Sword Demon who treated the game as a job every day, going offline? He could very well be lurking in the resurrection point waiting for you for the whole day. This was known as the corpse guarding spell in the World of Warcraft. Now that there were no corpses to guard, those who had the willpower would guard the resurrection point. What made Gu Fei feel even more regretful was that Remnant Dream would not be able to escape this time. Gu Fei's wanted mission was still hanging. The coordinates refreshed every minute. Gu Fei diligently reported to the Sword Demon while waiting for the werewolves to disperse. He hadn't even picked up the 3 pieces of equipment on the ground. Since it had already dropped, it would be a pity if he didn't pick it up and let the system farm it. Gu Fei still didn't know the range of the werewolf's aggro, so he could only stay as far away as possible. If it was just 1 or 2, he would have killed them. However, there were too many werewolves here, so Gu Fei could only patiently watch them from the side. After a few minutes, some of the werewolves gradually moved away, and there were only 2 werewolves left in the bustling open space. Gu Fei rushed up with his sword and began a hand-to-hand fight with the 2 werewolves. After each gave a holy blow, he pulled out the Night Streamer sword and began to attack accurately. This went on for a few more minutes. During this time, Gu Fei was almost slapped away by a werewolf's claw. Fortunately, he dodged fast enough and only lost half of his HP. Facing 2 werewolves and using such a high difficulty attack was indeed too difficult, but Gu Fei stubbornly persevered. When the second werewolf was knocked down, there was another crash, and the werewolf also dropped its equipment. Today's luck was really good. Gu Fei was surprised. In the process of players leveling up, they discovered a serious fact. The higher the level of the monster, the lower the chance of equipment dropping. Most players at level 40 did not have the highest end equipment. After the blacksmith in the system sold white equipment at level 30, there was no more. The high-end equipment market was in short supply. The equipment dropped by this level 70 werewolf was even rarer. Gu Fei bent down and picked it up. It was a dagger. He didn't take a closer look, but he picked up the 3 pieces of equipment dropped by Remnant Dream. It was another dagger, and finally, it wasn't a dagger anymore. Remnant Dream even dropped a small ring. Gu Fei was speechless. In the blink of an eye, he had obtained 3 daggers. He looked at them one by one. The dagger dropped by the werewolf was called Wolf's Fang. This high-end equipment was labeled as a dagger with a coefficient of 270%. Apart from this, it was all white. It turned out that Gu Fei's luck wasn't good enough. The 2 daggers that Remnant Dream dropped were unusual. Gu Fei looked at them and was shocked. They were actually green equipment. The 2 daggers were one long and one short. The long one was called Long Execution, and the short one was called Short Sai. According to the description below, the set was called Long Execution, Short Sai. It looked like a 2-piece dagger set. Long Execution dagger had a coefficient of 220%, Short Sai dagger had a coefficient of 210%, Long Execution dagger was strengthened by 30%, damage plus 10%, strength plus 10%. Short Sai attack speed was strengthened by 30%, attack speed plus 10%, agility plus 10%. Apart from this, there were the set's unique attributes for green equipment. Critical rate 15%, accuracy 15%. Skill, Double Flurry. Just like Gu Fei's Night Streamer, there was no explanation for the skill. Gu Fei could tell that these 2 daggers were not ordinary just from their attack power, especially Long Execution. With the dagger's enhanced attributes, its damage exceeded that of the weapons commonly used by level 40 warriors. Because of the dagger's attack speed, its damage was generally lower than other weapons of the same level. Even a top-tier dagger couldn't reach the damage of a normal axe of the same level. For this dagger to be able to do so, it could only mean that it was a piece of equipment similar to the Night Streamer. As for Short Sai, its attributes showed that it mainly increased attack speed. Gu Fei held it in his hand and tried swinging it around. It did indeed feel more nimble. This was under the condition that Gu Fei couldn't reach his dagger's coefficient and hadn't fully developed its attributes. He really didn't know where Remnant Dream got such good equipment from. Did she steal it? Gu Fei was puzzled as he displayed the loot to everyone in the mercenary channel. It was a game, so there was no need for words. There was an option to show the equipment, as long as the equipment was in the player's hands. The experts in the mercenary group were naturally there. They had a much more accurate estimation of the equipment's value than Gu Fei. In an instant, the mercenary channel, which was originally silent, became silent. "Where's everyone?" Is there no one? Gu Fei shouted. What a strong dagger, and it's a set. Brother Yu was the first to exclaim. These attributes should be around the level of a level 55 equipment, right? Yeah. The dagger expert sword demon replied. Tell me the coordinates. What? The others were at a loss. Gu Fei hurriedly gave the coordinates of Remnant Dream's death. Just now, the reward for killing the werewolf and reporting once a minute had been accidentally stopped. Sword Demon had been at a loss for a long time. What are you two doing? Sword Demon and Gu Fei seemed to be signaling each other. The others were at a loss. They're chasing us, Gu Fei said. What's going on? Everyone asked. According to common sense, everyone was used to Gu Fei killing people. If it was an ordinary friend group, it would be normal for them to ask. However, Gu Fei was mainly doing this out of hobby. If you went to help him, he would get angry with you, so everyone was usually calm in the face of chaos. But today, Sword Demon was involved, so everyone couldn't help but ask. It's the guy who killed Sword Demon last time. What's his name again? Gu Fei didn't even remember his name. Remnant Dream is dead. Intel King's brother Yu was different. Everything big or small would be organized into a book. It was said that he had a special information compartment in his pocket. Yes, the equipment was dropped by him. Gu Fei said. These guys, killing people and stealing their items is quite good. Han Family Young Master said calmly. Coordinates. Sword Demon coldly interrupted. Gu Fei hurriedly went back to work. Where are you now? Sword Demon asked. Cloud Village. I'm heading back. Gu Fei replied. Cloud Village? It's a level 70 place. What are you doing there? The experts exclaimed again. Thus, Gu Fei followed the trend and posted Wolf Tooth. When the experts saw the damage of Wolf Tooth, they knew that this equipment was ridiculously high-end. If a normal white equipment had this damage, it was definitely above level 70. You took care of the werewolves? You killed monsters 30 levels higher than you. Brother Yu was about to shout out. Everyone knew that Gu Fei often killed monsters 20 levels higher than him. They didn't see him level up, so how did he break through 10 levels? This thing counters the werewolf's regeneration. Gu Fei posted the flame baptism. Holy, do you see it? Silence. This was the first time they had seen such a special attribute. I even got this from that guy today. Showing off was actually quite addictive. Gu Fei accidentally found something fun and didn't stop. The experts carefully opened it and instantly cursed, "What kind of trash is this? Throw it away. Despicable." It's not bad. Gu Fei laughed. He was happy to see such a contrast. Actually, Remnant Dream's small ring was considered a high-quality item. It was just that it couldn't compare to the long and short sai that he had just shown. Moreover, he was showing it off in front of top experts. It was just a slightly better item. Showing off like this? The experts felt as if they had been insulted. Coordinates. Sword Demon always interrupted when the atmosphere was a bit high. Before Gu Fei could answer, the Sword Ghost suddenly said, "Oh, there's no need. I've already seen him." Under the south gate of Cloud City, Remnant Dream had an anxious expression as if he was waiting for someone. Long and short sai dropped? Damn, isn't that too bad? His friends sighed for him in private chat. How depressing. He even dropped two at the same time. Where are you now? Be careful that he finds you again. His friends said. I've accepted his bounty. His coordinates are still far away. Remnant Dream said without hesitation. You accepted him and he accepted you. He also knows where you are. His friend reminded. Remnant Dream realized that he really was a bit retarded. Chapter 245. After all, Remnant Dream was a guy who had experienced a lot of PK scenes. At this time, he reacted to his companion's reminder and immediately activated stealth. He moved to the side while looking around to see who was looking for revenge. Sword Demon was depressed. After seeing Remnant Dream die, he immediately activated stealth to prepare a sneak attack. Who knew that when he was less than 2 meters away, This guy suddenly activated stealth and disappeared. Sword Demon regretted in his heart. If he had known, he would have just rushed up and killed him. He had developed the habit of sneaking attacks first in battle. As soon as he thought about going up to stab someone, he subconsciously sneaked over. As an expert, it was really not good to have such a fixed train of thought in battle. Sword Demon deeply reflected on himself. However, Sword Demon did not give up. He still carefully stabbed with his dagger and came to the position where Remnant Dream was standing. Finding nothing, Remnant Dream immediately left the original position after activating stealth. He wanted to be wary of the Mage's AoE bombardment, so he was already a few meters away from the original position. At this time, he was quietly observing from the side. There were people coming and going under the city gate. Everyone looked suspicious, but they did not hesitate to go their own way. The real suspect, Sword Demon, was in stealth, so Remnant Dream naturally could not see him. How is it? If Gu Fei wanted to attack, Sword Demon should have already dealt with the other party. He sent a message to express his condolences. He ran away. When I was about to stab him, he went into stealth. Sword Demon was extremely depressed. As a thief, Sword Demon for the first time had a grudge against the infinite time after high proficiency in the stealth skill. Countless players questioned this setting in the early days, but the official reply was that there would be countless anti-stealth skills and equipment to help players. As a result, everyone was now level 40 and there was no anti-stealth equipment. The Lurker's Trap was effective against stealth, so it was considered anti-stealth. But that thing on the ground was more conspicuous than a thief in stealth. It was still uncertain who would be anti-who. When Gu Fei heard this, he quickly looked at the wanted coordinates that had just been refreshed and told the Sword Demon. He didn't run. He's still over there. The Sword Demon was startled. He knew that Gu Fei had seen the coordinates, so he quickly asked, "What are the coordinates?" Gu Fei reported his coordinates. The coordinates were not a precise point, but an area. From the coordinates, they could only tell that Remnant Dream had died in this small area. The Sword Demon looked at the coordinate area. It was under the wall beside the city gate. Immediately, he was able to determine Remnant Dream's motive for dying. This guy must have suddenly realized that he might be attacked, so he hid to the side after going into stealth. This guy was really lucky. His dagger was not far away from him, but he actually managed to escape from death's door. Sword Demon was confident that Remnant Dream hadn't discovered him. From the moment he saw Remnant Dream die, he had been in a standard position behind him. He stared closely at Remnant Dream and didn't see him turn around. After that, the Sword Demon had been in stealth. There was no reason for Remnant Dream to discover him unless Remnant Dream had an anti-stealth item. If that was the case, Remnant Dream had a chance to counterattack him. There was no reason for him to go around to the wall. That was undoubtedly a good position to observe the passers-by under the city gate. After confirming that Remnant Dream hadn't discovered him, the Sword Demon held frostbite memories tightly and continued to carefully avoid the passers-by around him as he walked towards the wall. The stealth skill would reveal its true form if it came into contact with other players or NPCs. In fact, it was also within the scope of skill interruption. There were different ways to interrupt a skill in the parallel world. Some skills could only be interrupted at the start of a skill's activation, such as a mage's long-range spell or an archer's shot. After they launched their attack, they would attack the target, and it wouldn't affect the skill as a whole. Of course, because of the different nature of the skills of the two professions, there would be some subdivisions. For example, if the attack killed the target, the spell that the mage had released would lose its attack power due to the lack of the mage's mana support and control. However, it was different for an archer. The arrow that flew out would still maintain its original damage even after the archer died. Even the homing arrow, which seemed to be an attack with mana, would continue to pursue the target to avenge its master until the skill time was up. In addition to this kind of long-range skill, some skills of the melee professions could be interrupted by controlling the movement of the target because it was done personally. Take the warrior's whirlwind slash as an example. During the whirlwind, he accidentally cut down a big tree. As a result, the tree didn't break and blocked the sword. The warrior's whirlwind slash couldn't continue spinning and was naturally interrupted by the big tree. However, because the melee skill was done personally, it had another characteristic. It could interrupt itself. This was called skill cancellation by the players. It was a technique that needed to be mastered when combining melee skills. As for archers and mages, they didn't have skill cancellation. It was impossible to take back the spell that was released and the arrow that was shot. In short, because of the different characteristics of the skills, the interruption rules were different. It wasn't completely divided by the profession, but mainly by the characteristics of the skill. Take stealth for example. This was a non-combat skill, but it could also be interrupted. Moreover, it was extremely easy to interrupt. It could be interrupted with a touch, and there wasn't even a need to attack. At this time, the sword demon had already stepped into the coordinates where Remnant Dream was. He began to slowly move around with frostbite memories in front of him, behind him, and to the left and right. He was ready to pounce and push down the moment he discovered him. At this time, Remnant Dream didn't know that the sword demon was already waving his dagger in front of him. After carefully observing the various people under the lower city gate, Remnant Dream didn't find any suspicious people. In his heart, he felt that he might have been a little too nervous. Even so, he didn't think about canceling stealth. After all, it was better to be safe than sorry. If his friends came over, he could contact them privately. He wasn't afraid that he wouldn't be able to find them. Moreover, Remnant Dream didn't just stand there stupidly. He knew that if Gu Fei wanted to deal with him, he would definitely refresh his coordinates at any time. At that time, even if the other party saw that there was no one at the coordinates, they would think that he was in stealth. A mage could carpet bomb him, and he would have to reveal his true form. Therefore, Remnant Dream would change his position every time. In short, he would move around in a large circle. This guy's luck was really good. When he moved, he only brushed past the tip of the sword demon's dagger by a centimeter. There was a real danger of being discovered if he shivered. After changing positions, the sword demon still didn't know. He continued to touch like a blind man crossing a river until Gu Fei sent the latest coordinates again. This guy. The sword demon cursed and continued to touch in another direction. Fortunately, no one could see him while he was in stealth. Otherwise, his strange appearance of a blind man touching an elephant would really make him a laughingstock. Remnant Dream was already extremely careful. He kept moving around, trying to use the constantly changing coordinates to confuse Gu Fei's vision and hearing. Thinking about how Gu Fei's coordinates would change every time he refreshed, but he always circled in a small area. However, because he was in stealth, he couldn't find him. He didn't know what kind of expression he would have. Remnant Dream couldn't help but laugh out loud. At the same time, he suddenly realized a problem. The wanted mission coordinates only refreshed every 5 minutes. Why was he so diligent in changing positions? How many times had he changed positions? He probably didn't even know. He was busy for nothing. At the same time, he also thought that after tossing around for so long, even if the other party was nearby, they should be tired of not being able to find him, right? He hadn't found any suspicious people. It wasn't that Remnant Dream didn't think that there was a thief sneaking around him. His judgment was still accurate, but unfortunately, there were 2 things he didn't know. First, Gu Fei, who had the Windchaser emblem, didn't refresh every 5 minutes, but every minute. Second, there was indeed a thief beside him, but the patience and perseverance of this thief were far beyond his imagination. It wasn't without reason that heaven rewarded the diligent. Remnant Dream was originally diligent in moving, so that Gu Fei and the sword demon couldn't do anything to him. However, at this time, he suddenly began to slack off. He stood somewhere for more than a minute, and suddenly he felt something gently brush against his side. Remnant Dream, who had already lost his vigilance, casually tilted his neck and glanced. The sword demon's frostbite memories had already turned into a blue light, stabbing straight at his neck. That momentum seemed to want to directly cut his head off. The sword demon had touched him for so long, and he was indeed very patient. However, patience didn't mean that he had no emotions at all. The sword demon's little universe had already accumulated to the point of exploding. He had simulated assassinating Remnant Dream 180 times in his mind. At this time, once he started, The explosive reaction speed was even stronger than Gu Fei's. Remnant Dream still had his head tilted in a cute manner. His neck was directly slashed by the sword demon. Of course, the bloody scenes in the game weren't heavy, and after the official launch, they would be further reduced. Remnant Dream was stabbed by this slash. Logically speaking, the main artery in his neck should have been broken. Blood should have spurted out or splashed out. In short, it should have been very turbulent. At this time, there was only a small splash of blood, indicating that the slash had hit. However, this momentum had already suppressed Remnant Dream to the point that he had no will to fight. He turned his head and ran, his legs extremely smooth. Unfortunately, this time it was the sword demon, not Gu Fei. The sword demon was better at sprinting than him, and his speed was also faster than him. As soon as he used it, he immediately chased after him like a shadow, stabbing at him fiercely. The two of them staged a bloody street scene, running from one side of the city gate to the other. Remnant Dream spilled blood all along the way and finally fell. Before disappearing, he stretched out his hand, seemingly full of endless anticipation for what was ahead. The sword demon looked in the direction he stretched out his hand and had an epiphany. Over there was the warehouse. This guy wanted to throw things into the warehouse before he died, but unfortunately, his speed was much slower than the sword demon. TSK TSK TSK. The sword demon sighed as he picked up the two pieces of equipment that Remnant Dream had dropped on the ground. Butterfly knot. Look, Remnant Dream's dead classmate died because he wasn't hardworking, so everyone must be hardworking. Chapter 246. There would always be gloomy times in life. For Remnant Dream, today was very gloomy, very gloomy. Back then, Remnant Dream had been bullied by Gu Fei at the resurrection point and chased all over the streets. Remnant Dream had thought that she was already very unlucky. However, compared to today, she was too embarrassed to talk about those trivial losses. Because of the PK points, Remnant Dream, who was level 40, had now fallen to level 36. At this level, Remnant Dream's loss of one level was greater than the loss of all his previous levels. Because of the PK points, Remnant Dream had already dropped a total of 5 pieces of equipment. Among them, Long Death and Short Sigh was an extraordinary item. Remnant Dream had never used it before, and it had dropped just like that. The other 3 weren't as precious, but added together, they were worth hundreds of gold coins. Still, because of the PK points, the gloominess didn't seem to end there. As long as he didn't go offline, Gu Fei would know where he was at any time and could chase after him at any time. And even if he went offline, Remnant Dream thought of the thief just now. That guy couldn't have been touching him all this time, right? Such perseverance made Remnant Dream feel terrified. He realized that going offline was equivalent to exposing his position. That guy must be very patient and waiting for him to come back online. Remnant Dream recognized Sword Demon. He knew that he was the #1 expert in the online gaming world back then, and he also knew that he was one of the victims of his PK gold farming in the parallel world. He had absolute reasons to support playing Remnant Dream to death. However, Remnant Dream wasn't thinking about how to avoid trouble at this time. He was still thinking about how to plot against Gu Fei. Because he had to get back Long Death and Short Sigh. Not because of any obsession, but because of his job. Remnant Dream was a member of the gold farming studio. His game equipment and account were all provided by the studio boss, who also paid him regularly. And the first thing he had to do was help the boss earn money in the game, earn money and earn money. Killing people to drop top-grade equipment? This was just one of their ways of making money. From this point of view, Long Death and Short Sigh actually didn't belong to Remnant Dream. These were all things that had to be handed over to the boss, and it was up to him to decide whether to keep or not. The more valuable the item, the more it was like this. It was just that this was the first time Remnant Dream had ever obtained such an exquisite item. In a moment of selfishness, she wanted to earn some extra income from it, so she secretly kept it. He didn't dare to use it himself. He just wanted to find an opportunity to sell it and exchange it for money. Auction house? Exchange? None of these places would do. When the items were displayed, his name would also be displayed. This kind of private behavior was a taboo in the studio. Once the news got out, it was inevitable that they would be fired. A game was a game, but right now, Remnant Dream was trying to make a living, so he couldn't be careless. Of course, Remnant Dream had kept this equipment a secret from his colleagues. The only ones who knew about it were two of his private partners, not his colleagues. At this time, Remnant Dream desperately wanted to take back the money, but she couldn't rely on the power of their studio, because their rule was to report as soon as they obtained anything valuable. No one knew about the existence of the money. At this time, when Remnant Dream reported it, it had already exploded. Everyone who worked in this field would understand what Remnant Dream was doing. If it had exploded just like that, and the other party took it and used it silently, Remnant Dream wouldn't be so nervous. But the problem was that he believed that the other party wouldn't do so. This group of people was already notorious in Cloud City. Just thinking about them made people's teeth itch. Say, how satisfying would it be to get the exquisite equipment from the hands of this group of people? Just based on this, Remnant Dream reckoned that this guy would find an opportunity to publicize it everywhere. Once the wind blew, not only would the outside be scolded like a street rat, but the inside would also be eradicated because of corruption. Otherwise, why would Remnant Dream be so gloomy today? The most important thing was to quickly snatch the long and short side back. Recover this stolen item, quickly hand it over to the organization, and then everything would be fine. Now that you're empty-handed, no one will believe you even if you report that the equipment you've obtained has been destroyed. At this time, Remnant Dream didn't want to take back the money. He just wanted to keep his job. As for the series of problems such as the decrease in trust after this matter, he would think about it later. Remnant Dream activated stealth and scurried on the street. This time, he didn't dare to be careless. He walked like he was drifting. At the same time, he sent a message to two friends. Don't go to the city gate. You died again. His friends mourned for him. Where you guys? I'll go find you. Remnant Dream needed to keep moving at this time. Just past the central square, Pike Street, his friend said. I'll come. Do you have any clothes? Remnant Dream asked. What? Your butt was exposed? Remnant Dream cried bitterly. Just now, Sword Demon's knife had pierced through his clothes. When he revived at the resurrection point, he was wearing clothes that stuck to his flesh. Needless to say, it was embarrassing. Remnant Dream felt that it would look better if he wore underwear and ran naked. Fortunately, he knew stealth. Remnant Dream was really a happy-go-lucky person. He had fallen to this point, but he was still good at finding humor in the ordinary. The two sides met on Pike Street. Remnant Dream didn't show himself. He continued to maintain stealth and said to his friend, I'm coming. I'm here. His friend naturally couldn't see him. He could only hear that his voice was very erratic, going left and then right. Can't you just stand properly? His friend was puzzled. From the sound, Remnant Dream seemed to be circling the two of them. No, it's dangerous. You two don't talk nonsense. Pretend you don't know I'm here. Let's continue to talk. Remnant Dream was very vigilant. Perhaps the sword ghost is nearby, he thought. You guys continue walking. I'll follow behind you, Remnant Dream said. So the two friends started walking. Remnant Dream asked, Have you found the right person? I've sent out a mission announcement, but no one has replied yet. Let's wait. How about we go to the mercenary building and wait? Remnant Dream needed to attack Gu Fei, but he didn't have enough people. Gu Fei obviously wasn't someone that could be beaten to death by a team of 10 or so people. He had no choice but to find help from outsiders. Hiring mercenaries was naturally the simplest and most effective way. But the problem was that Remnant Dream wanted to hire people to do PK. A considerable number of mercenary players who played a peaceful game wouldn't accept this kind of mission. Some large mercenary groups paid more attention to their own image and publicly stated that they wouldn't accept such missions that were detrimental to the unity of the people. But people who understood the situation knew that publicly stated that they wouldn't accept such missions in public. If there was such a mission, they would talk about it in private. Missions for PK players, of course, couldn't be released through the system. But how could this be a problem for intelligent players? In Cloud City, there was a mission to teach Paddy Keith a lesson. This mission was extremely easy and didn't require help at all. Releasing this mission for help meant that he was looking for someone to help him PK. Paddy Keith, in English, was Paddy Keith. It was abbreviated as PK. After the mercenary group saw this kind of mission, if they were interested, they would contact the other party and discuss the real deal in private. At this time, Remnant Dream asked a friend to help release a mission to teach Paddy Keith a lesson and clearly indicated the type of player needed. It was difficult to deal with Gu Fei, mainly because he ran too fast and could teleport. Long-range players couldn't kite him, melee players were in danger of being kited, and he could detect thieves' stealth. After thinking about it, Remnant Dream felt that the safest and most effective way was this: traps. Currently, the probability of traps being exposed was relatively high, but players had already mastered the skill of burying their own traps. If it was just one trap, the probability of stepping on it was much lower than not stepping on it. But what if there were many traps? Therefore, this time, the mercenary mission released by Remnant Dream emphasized that multiple high-level players with excellent trap skills were needed. It would be great if there was a group of players who were good at playing traps and formed a mercenary group. Maybe they would often work together and cooperate to create some more exquisite trap formations. Remnant Dream thought so. At present, the more famous cooperation formations in Cloud City were the Mage formation of Singing to Wine and the Arrow formation of Crisscrossing the Four Seas. If these two groups set up an ambush, Remnant Dream felt that it would be a great threat. But the problem was that these two were big mercenary groups under the big guilds, and the fees were all over the place. Moreover, there were many experts in the big guilds, and some of them were Remnant Dream's customers. Although he tried to hide every sneak attack, there were, after all, guys like Sword Demon who spied on him in an instant. If he happened to run into such a guy, wouldn't he be walking right into a trap? Therefore, traps were economical, safe, and practical. He just didn't know if he could recruit people. As he walked toward the mercenary building, a friend suddenly sent him a message. Someone contacted me. It's a mercenary group. He said that most of them are skilled trap masters. Really? Remnant Dream was very surprised. In fact, he was fantasizing about such a group because the current power of traps was really limited. One person could only throw one, and when activated, he could only catch one. It was not yet the time to accompany a trap army. He didn't know which expert was so knowledgeable to start training so early. Where is he? Remnant Dream asked. He's in the building waiting for us. His friend said, Butterfly Knot. There are many traps and dangers. Do you feel the suspense, students? Chapter 247. Outside the mercenary building, the stealthed Remnant Dream and his two friends saw a guy standing at the agreed meeting point from afar. Remnant Dream's heart sank. Take the Sword Demon for example. Although he was a little ugly, he still had the aura of an expert when he stood there calmly with a dagger in his hand. However, the person in front of them didn't have a good appearance or aura. He exuded an extremely wretched aura. Leaving her job in the hands of such a guy, Remnant Dream felt bitterly disappointed. Is it that guy? Remnant Dream sent a message to his friends. Because they suspected that the Sword Demon was following them, Remnant Dream and his two friends went their separate ways after a brief contact. Although they were already at the mercenary building, they were still 8 feet away. They weren't worried that the Sword Demon would suspect them at all. Remnant Dream still needed these two friends to secretly arrange everything. No way! Remnant Dream's friend also saw the wretched appearance of this person. The person who contacted me said that he was a lurker, but this person is a mage. Oh, then wait a little longer. Remnant Dream let out a long sigh. Who knew that when his two friends stood there and started to wait, the mage had already taken the initiative to come over. You two, are you looking for by Yiruoyu? The two were startled. This was indeed the name of the player who contacted them. The two nodded in confusion. Just as they were about to ask, the other party had already taken the initiative to explain. He just happened to have something to do and left. I'm his friend, so it's the same for you guys. We're all in the same group. Oh, what's your name? Remnant Dream's friend asked. The other party didn't even think before saying, my name isn't worth mentioning. Let's get down to business. This sounded like he was pretending to be pretentious. However, this person's gaze was evasive and his words weren't imposing. It seemed like he really wanted to bypass this topic and quickly cut to the next step. Remnant Dream's two friends couldn't figure it out and could only continue. Looking at the mission we issued, I think you guys roughly understand what it means. We want to borrow your trap skills to PK someone. That's no problem. My brother's trap skills are top-notch. You found the right person. This person vowed as he patted his chest, bragging without even asking who the opponent is. Damn, that's too frivolous. I think this group is most likely unreliable. Remnant Dream's friend commented as he reported the conversation to Remnant Dream. Just a perfunctory answer. Find someone else. Death Remnant Dream felt the same way. From his appearance, he felt that this person was unreliable. Now that he heard a few words from him, he felt even more so. Remnant Mengsheng was also very familiar with mercenaries. This person's negotiation style was very unprofessional. Just as Remnant Dream's friend was about to send him away, the man suddenly pointed somewhere and said, "Oh, just in time. You can ask him about traps. Actually, I'm a mage and I don't know much about traps." Remnant Dream's dead friend turned his head in the direction he was pointing and saw a fellow who was even more wretched than this person. His head was drooping and he was listlessly swaying in their direction. This person was undoubtedly an archer. Hearing the commotion, Zhang Xian raised his head and took a look. Finally, he perked up and walked over quickly. Dead Dream's friends were no longer interested in this. They were about to end the negotiation when they suddenly received a message from Dead Dream. "Wait a minute, is this guy with them?" "Yeah." His friend replied. "All right, let's have a good talk with them." Remnant Dreams suddenly became excited. What happened? His friend didn't understand. In terms of wretchedness, this guy was even more wretched than that mage. Why did Remnant Dreams seem to favor him so much? I recognize this person. In Cloud City, there are 3 archers ranked in the top 20. Yutian Shinming, Reflection of Time, and Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. This person is Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. If he switched to Lurker, he would be Cloud City's #1 trap technician. Who else could be better than him in terms of technique? Dead Dream quickly replied. Dead Dream's 2 friends were moved. They didn't expect the guy in front of them to be able to rank in the top 20. They quickly complimented him in the way they dealt with experts. However, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka waved his hand and said, "I can't. I just dropped a level recently and haven't reached level 40. I don't know how to set traps." The 2 were speechless. They were about to inform Dead Dream when they heard him continue. "However, there are many traps in our team. I don't have to do anything. I can just guide them from the sidelines." The 2 of them conveyed his words verbatim to Death Remnant Dream. Death Remnant Dream agreed with him. Well, the method of setting traps is the same. There's nothing much to say. The technical content is mainly in the placement of the traps. Whether or not you have the skills can be used as guidance. With an expert like this, there shouldn't be a problem. This was all about Remnant Dream's death, and the 2 friends were just there to help. Since the person involved, Remnant Dream's death, acknowledged this person very much, the 2 of them had no objections. They immediately asked, "How many spies do you have? How many do you need?" Tsubasa Sakuratsuka asked back. "It can trap 1 person with 100% chance. How many of you are confident?" In the early days of the mercenary business, 1 person paid and the other did the work. It was as simple as that. But as the market continued to mature, both the buyer and the seller had more conditions to negotiate. The difficulty of the mission, the time needed, the manpower that the mercenaries would send, the capabilities of the manpower, and many other details directly affected the price of the mission. Of course, if it was released through the system, it wouldn't be so complicated. The main thing was that it was a private transaction between players. Who is the person you want to deal with? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka asked. This guy's questions and answers were much more professional than the sorcerer's. The 2 thought and replied, Qianli is drunk. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and the sorcerer were both startled. This shock was within the expectations of Dead Dream and the others. After all, Qianli is drunk was very famous recently. He was known as the #1 expert in Cloud City. Some people might think that this was an exaggeration, but Dead Dream, who had fought with Qianli before, was very sure of it. At least he couldn't think of anyone in Cloud City who couldn't be defeated by 10 people. Facing such an expert, Dead Dream was really worried that the other party would retreat. He was looking forward to the help of such an expert. But this person's name and other information must be told to the other party. Dead Dream couldn't be like the sorcerer just now and say, "The name is not worth mentioning, just deal with him." The sorcerer's name was indeed not worth mentioning, but the target was the core content of the transaction. The price of the mission would also come from this, so it was impossible not to say. "So it's this bitch, I'll give you a 20% discount." Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was slightly startled, but he had already returned to his normal state. Dead Dream's 2 friends were also as nervous as Dead Dream. They were worried that the other party would retreat because the opponent was too strong. Hearing this, he was overjoyed and happily told Remnant Dream about her death. Dead Dream was also very happy and hurriedly said, "Don't worry about the price too much. Hurry and let them call the necessary people to set up. This Qianli is going to be back soon." Dead Dream was still paying attention to Gu Fei's coordinates. Cloud Village was a level 70 leveling area after all. According to the theory that the further away from a main city, the higher the leveling area was. This place wasn't close. Gu Fei still needed some time to come back. Dead Dream believed that he would directly come to him to finish the quest, or gather friends to continue piking him. This was the bargaining chip he used to lure Gu Fei. Just like before, he used himself as bait. Dead Dream was determined not to let the 5 PK points go to waste. The 2 friends claimed that they could lead 1,000 miles drunk to the place they needed, and used this as an excuse to lower the price of the quest. Afterwards, they followed Remnant Dream's orders and didn't bicker with the others anymore. Where are you most confident in setting up the trap? Since you said that you can control the other party's route, then there are many places like this. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka replied. No matter what, it has to be outside the city. Let's talk as we walk and find the closest place. Ha! Tsubasa Sakuratsuka laughed and said, "The closest place is the city." City? The city is made of stone, how are we going to set up traps? The stone road could also be set up, but it was too eye-catching. People wouldn't step on it, so they couldn't use trap skills. That's why I said we're experts. Come with me. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka shook his head and at the same time called out to the mage, "Damn, why isn't he here yet? Where's that bitch Xiao Bai? Wasn't he the one who accepted the quest? I just saw a girl especially pretty. Xiao Bai will go take a look." The mage said. "Then why didn't you go? Can I outrun him?" The mage's face was gloomy. Just as they were about to leave the mercenary building, they saw an archer come out from the corner of the street. He saw them and ran towards them. After glancing at Dead Dream's 2 friends, he extended his hand. "Hello, I'm Bai Yi Ruoyu. How did it go?" The 2 friends nodded and shook hands. "We're going to set up now." Bai Yi Ruoyu nodded and didn't talk about this anymore. He moved closer to the mage and winked. "Hey, that girl isn't bad. Did you get her name?" "No, but she stepped on my trap, These guys were really wretched. Was this the necessary temperament for a trap expert? Remnant Dream and his 2 friends thought. Butterfly not. The next chapter will be Dead Dream's gloomy continuation. Thinking of this, I can't help but sympathize with him. Chapter 248. Dead Dream's 2 friends followed Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and the others to set up the trap. Dead Dream naturally didn't follow them. As the bait, he naturally had to do his job well. Remnant Dream was still very clear-headed at this moment. The current situation was that he had to find 1,000 miles drunk, kill him, and take his revenge. To 1,000 miles drunk, however, he was just a very ordinary wanted mission. It wasn't something that he had to complete. Moreover, after what had happened in Suiyun village, 1,000 miles drunk would definitely be on guard against Remnant Dream using herself as bait after she died. At this time, the safest and most effective way was to do his own thing and ignore Dead Dream. After all, he had already killed him and gained a lot. If it was Dead Dream, he would definitely do the same. So at the beginning of the plan, Dead Dream had deeply considered how to bait Gu Fei again. As for how to find the person who set up the trap, that was the second thing he was worried about. When he heard the notification from his companions, Dead Dream's mood was actually very complicated. On one hand, he was afraid that someone would follow his coordinates to find him. After all, he had PvP points. If he died, he would lose equipment and level. On the other hand, he was also a little bit hoping that someone would find him. If someone was looking for him, it meant that Qianli and his gang didn't plan on letting him go. Then he would have a chance to lure Qianli into a trap again. So when he was under the city gate, Dead Dream didn't leave after going into stealth. He continued to wander around. Waiting for someone? If it was someone they knew, they could contact each other at any time. There was no need to wait at the city gate. The real purpose of Remnant Dream's death was to confirm whether or not someone was chasing after her coordinates to kill her. Of course, he wanted to confirm, but he also didn't want to be killed, so he constantly changed his coordinates. Unfortunately, he didn't find any suspicious players. In the end, a thief who was also in stealth suddenly burst out from beside him. Remnant Dream's heart was filled with all sorts of emotions. He finally confirmed that Qianli wouldn't rest and would continue to chase after him. At the same time, he was depressed to die again, losing 2 more levels and 2 more pieces of equipment. After that, he had always suspected that Sword Demon was still near him, but he didn't find a way to solve it. Actually, it was not difficult to take care of him. The Sword Spectre was not as ridiculously strong as 1,000 miles drunk. Moreover, Remnant Dream Death could borrow the power of the studio to deal with him. She could call a few more people, and once the Sword Spectre appeared, they could gang up on him. Taking him down would not be a problem. Remnant Dream and the others in the studio were all PK experts, much more professional than the average player. Dead Dream deliberately left Sword Demon near him. He wanted to use the eyes of Sword Demon to make Qianli think that he wasn't playing any tricks. Although the Sword Ghost and Remnant Dream had turned a blind eye to each other, if the Sword Ghost was nearby, it could roughly tell where Remnant Dream had gone. From a certain angle, it could determine what Remnant Dream had been doing. While his friends were busy setting up traps, Dead Dream showed the tail behind him what he was doing. For example, going to the auction house to look at the equipment. For Dead Dream, who had been killed from head to toe, this was really what he should do at the moment. Just like a city had its prosperous and rich side, there would always be some unknown and dilapidated areas. The main city in the game also followed this line of thinking. The two followed Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and the others and came to such a T-shaped small street. This place was far away from the main street. The stone slabs on the street were broken, the dirt was bare, and weeds were growing in many places. Go through here, go to the right, turn left at the second street corner, and then go through. That's the archer shooting range. If you want to go offline from the direction of the south gate, the shortest route is through here, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka explained to the two. York Alley is the shortest route. Someone had a different opinion. At this time, there were many members of the other team. There were more than 10 people, all lurkers, and all of them were very wretched. Bullshit. Reggie Street is the shortest route. There were many different opinions. Dead Dream's 2 friends listened to the argument and felt like they had lived in vain. They had also played in Cloud City for so long, but they had never heard of the street names mentioned by these people. Stop arguing, let's get down to business first. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. But no one listened. Everyone was still arguing, but in the midst of the argument, a question was asked. Where is that bitch coming from? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka looked at the two. Where are you going to lure him from? We need to know. It's really hard to say, it depends on the situation, the two said. In fact, the two didn't have an answer. There was no direction to lure people. Dead Dream was just poking at the coordinates and waiting for Qianli to come over when he was drunk. Who knew which direction he would come from? And this place was a bit remote, Qianli might not be able to find him when he was drunk. The two thought too much. If that's the case, then let's do it this way. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka used the two corners of the intersection as the bottom corner, and left some distance between the top and the opposite wall. Like this, he outlined a triangle, then drew a cross line in the middle of the triangle. At the same time, he explained to Dead Dream's two friends, this way, there is only one requirement: turn. As long as he turns, I can guarantee that he will step into the trap. Oh! The two were confused, hoping that Tsubasa Sakuratsuka would explain in detail. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka drew circles on the triangle he drew. We will set traps here, 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 here. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said more than 10 here, and drew more than 10 circles on the triangle. At this time, no matter which direction he comes from, as long as he turns, he will step into our trap triangle. Even though the traps in this triangle aren't very concentrated, you can still give it a try. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka used his circle drawing stick to poke at the ground and said, no matter which direction he enters this triangle, if the first step doesn't work, the second step doesn't work, there will be a third step. If the third step doesn't work, we will give you a full refund. The two stared blankly at the triangular circles on the ground. Come, let's try walking. Let's see if we can step into the circle. We haven't set any traps yet, so what's there to be afraid of? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. Thus, the two took big strides, walking from 3 different directions of the T-shaped street, turning left and right as they tried. Just as Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said, no matter how they walked, they would step into the circle within 3 steps. This circle, isn't it a bit too big? One person said as he stepped on the circle under his feet. Hee hee, this is a game. What do you think it is? Traps also have a range. As long as your foot steps into this range, the trap will activate and clamp your foot, restricting your movement. Do you really think you'll be able to fit into the trap with 100% accuracy? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. Oh. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka continued to be pleased with himself. Actually, if we have enough people, the triangle area can be expanded. Then, even if he walks straight, he will definitely hit. But right now, we don't have enough people, so the 100% hit area can only be this big. It can't be pushed up to the wall, so only when the opponent's path turns will it be foolproof. Can you guys do it? This shouldn't be a problem. The two felt that this was something they could control. Then let's set it up like this. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka nodded. He turned around and yelled at the guys who were still arguing about which street was the closest. Set the trap. Don't be so fucking noisy, be quiet. The crowd still didn't listen, and as they argued, they came over to set the trap. At this time, Remnant Dream's 2 dead friends suddenly thought of something and hurriedly stopped the crowd. Wait. What is it? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka looked at them. This triangle area of yours is indeed a sure hit area, but this way, our drunk friend in charge of Chinli won't be able to avoid it when he turns the corner. What should we do? The two said. So that's how you're going to lure the enemy, you should have said so earlier. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said as he moved the circle of his triangle slightly and pointed. Originally, there wouldn't be such a Y-shaped gap, but since your people also want to go, I'll leave this path. Be careful, I won't take responsibility if he steps on it again. How are we going to tell him? The two said anxiously. The coordinates in the game were regional, and the entire triangular area was within 1 coordinate. It was obviously impossible to use coordinates to indicate the area. Using words to describe the area made the two of them feel powerless from head to toe. How about this? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka used a stick to lightly draw the Y-shaped gap on the ground. Let him walk on this line when he comes, he definitely won't get hit, but I can't draw it any more obvious. Let him open his eyes wider. Is his eyesight okay? No problem, no problem. The two quickly said. Then that's it. We'll set the trap, and you can already lure people over. Let's finish earlier. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's words revealed incomparable confidence, making the two more and more convinced that he was indeed an expert. When it came to traps, his temperament was solemn, and Remnant Dream's words weren't false. This really was the #1 trap technician in Cloud City, even though he had dropped a level and temporarily couldn't set traps. The two already told Remnant Dream about the situation and repeatedly emphasized to see the Y-shaped line clearly. If you don't walk on this line, you'll definitely fall into the trap. You must be careful. The two of them vowed solemnly. Little did they know that at this time, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's guild and mercenary group were also in a mess. Damn, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, you're too wretched. What triangle area? Only you can make it up. The triangle area is also filled with OOXX. It's obscene, very obscene. No wonder you can't get girls. Damn, how can the trap range be so big? You're bullying strangers like this. Damn, if you lie to your customers like this, will you still have business in the future? Close down as soon as possible. What's with all the noise? Hurry up and get to work. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka scolded in the channel. Damn, where do we put it? The circle is so big. Someone complained. Who said we're putting it in the circle? Put it all on the Y-shaped line. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. Chapter 249. The channel was filled with boos. Everyone heard it clearly. Just now, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said that the Y-shaped line was left for the employer to walk, but now that the trap was laid all over that area, and the people who came over still walked along the line, it would be strange if they didn't fall into the trap. Just who is our employer? Everyone was confused. Just now, when Tsubasa Sakuratsuka took the money, everyone clearly saw it. Could it be a double agent? Someone guessed. That's too despicable. While everyone cursed, they did as they said and laid the trap on the line. More than 10 people surrounded the triangle area, and the people outside the circle had no idea what they were doing. Okay. When the circle of people dispersed, the trap had already been laid. This group of people was indeed an expert at laying traps. After laying the trap, there was not a trace of it, and it was as if the area had never been dug. At the same time, they erased the circles and crosses and drew the Y-shaped line again, marking out how the other party should walk to step into the trap. Good, well done. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka nodded. Okay, let me try. One of Remnant Dream's two friends was excited and was about to go online. When the circle of people heard this, they were all dumbfounded. They looked at Tsubasa Sakuratsuka with extreme disdain, as if to say, your stupid plan is about to be seen through so quickly. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka hurriedly went forward to stop that guy. Boss, don't mess with us. If you go up and walk, the faint line will immediately be erased. Right now, that area is full of traps. How are we going to draw the line again? Don't tell me we have to start all over again? It doesn't matter. Can't we just follow the line and draw it again? The other person said. The problem is, can you see where the trap is? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. I can't. The other person shook his head. Then that's it. If you go up and step on the line now, we won't be able to draw it so accurately. We have to dig out the trap, and when we set it up again, we can draw it accurately. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. When the other party heard that it was reasonable, he immediately expressed that he wouldn't add to the mess. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Not bad, Yuzai. You're pretty good at bluffing. Someone said in the channel. If you're so good at bluffing, why can't you even get a girl? Laughter filled the air. Not only did he not get her, but he was also tricked into a leveling area by a girl and killed. Ha! Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was not in a good mood, but he did not show it on his face. He continued to chat cheerfully with the two fellows. My two bosses, why don't we just kill them after they fall into the trap? The two of them nodded. Sure. We have nothing to do anyway, so it's no trouble at all. Brothers, prepare the tracking arrows. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka raised his hand. Everyone cheered. Everyone, find a place to hide. As soon as Sakuratsuka Tsubasa's voice fell, everyone skillfully set up human ladders to climb up the wall. At first glance, it was obvious that they were all experts. Even the mage's skills showed an unusual level of proficiency. Not long after, the alley was empty. Only Remnant Dream and his two friends were left on the quiet street. Looking at the triangular area that was full of traps, they could only feel the chilly wind blowing in their faces. "Do you two want to come up?" Tsubasa Sakuratsuka asked as he poked his head out from the rooftop. "Oh, thank you." The two of them went up to the rooftop with the help of the people on the rooftop. The scenery on the rooftop was very good. The rooftops at the intersection of the street were already filled with people. It was a magnificent sight. "Lie down. Only show your head after you fall into the trap. This building isn't very high. If you show your head a little, you'll be able to see it from below." Tsubasa Sakuratsuka reminded them again and again. "Everything is ready. Remember, Y-shaped." When Remnant Dream received the message, he was already rushing over to this street. He wasn't familiar with this place. He had passed through many streets according to the coordinates, but he always got lost. This made him very anxious. The coordinates of 8,000 miles drunk that he had spawned were getting closer and closer, but he still couldn't find the way here. "How do I go?" Remnant Dream sent a message to his friend. He was about to cry. His friend couldn't describe this place clearly either. He could only vaguely shout the coordinates, then ask for Remnant Dream's coordinates, then say something like, "Soon, soon, close, close." It was basically not a hint, but just a comfort. Finally, Remnant Dream found this T-shaped street. The entrance of the street was not far ahead. Remnant Dream calmed down and slowed down. He wanted to wait for Qianli Drunk, because he still remembered that Sword Demon was nearby. If he went in the direction of the trap early, maybe Qianli Drunk wouldn't be able to fall, and Sword Demon would become cannon fodder first. At this time, Remnant Dream had no interest in Sword Demon at all. He just wanted to catch Qianli Drunk. Remnant Dream wanted to stall for time, but he was also afraid that Sword Demon would find him, so he moved forward in a zigzag route in the street. The coordinates that refreshed every 5 minutes were still not there. Remnant Dream was really anxious. Just as he was patiently continuing to deal with it, suddenly, a black figure came out of the street in front of him. He glanced over and immediately rushed over. "Qianli Drunk." Remnant Dream was excited. He finally arrived. It was just that the direction he came from was the worst. If he came from the lower end of the T-shaped street, it would undoubtedly be the most ideal. At this intersection, there was no other choice but to turn, and he would definitely fall into the trap. If he entered from the same street as Remnant Dream, then behind Remnant Dream could also lead him to turn. At this time, the situation was worse. If Remnant Dream didn't hurry up and turn the corner, Qianli Drunk would rush over. Fortunately, the zigzag route that he used for a long time was only a few steps away from the street intersection. Remnant Dream quickened his steps to the street intersection and glanced forward. Qianli Drunk's speed was really fast. Maybe he had already discovered me. Remnant Dream knew that stealth was ineffective against Qianli Drunk, but at this time, he pretended not to know, and his face was calm and composed. He didn't know that Gu Fei could indeed sense the existence of people who were in stealth. But it was just existence, nothing more. He couldn't feel what kind of expression you had. Remnant Dream put on a show while in stealth, but it was completely superfluous. Looking down, Remnant Dream found the faintly discernible Y-shaped line on the ground. He secretly praised the ingenuity of this trap. This circle of land didn't look like a trap at all. And this line, if he didn't have someone to remind him, he would never have noticed it if he just walked around casually like an ordinary person. What a good line. It filled people with confidence and hope. The money spent was worth it. Remnant Dream was so moved that he almost cried. His gloomy day was finally over. Thinking of this, he stepped onto the Y-shaped line. There was a pause sound. This sound passed through the mud and broke out of the ground. It didn't seem so clear and was full of turbidity, but it pierced through Remnant Dream's heart. Confidence, hope, life, ideals, they all disappeared in an instant. Thousands of words only turned into one sentence, "Fuck you." Remnant Dream roared, but he couldn't move after falling into the trap. He could only think of one thing, the struggle of a cornered beast. Remnant Dream's two friends heard Remnant Dream's roar at the street intersection. They thought that he was venting his anger on Qianli, who had fallen into the trap. They immediately stood up and said, "Got it, everyone, do it." But Tsubasa Sakuratsuka nodded and reached out his hand to gently push. Before the two of them could stand up straight on the roof, they had already fallen down. As they fell, they looked at the street intersection. Remnant Dream was stuck there, unable to move. Qianli, who was drunk, was already at the street intersection, looking at him calmly. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka stood up on the roof and made an okay gesture to Gu Fei below. The sorcerer on the other wall also stood up proudly and called out to Gu Fei, "Brothers Zhu. Hey, fireball." Gu Fei waved at him. The fireball leaped up, and Gu Fei quickly drew his sword and extinguished it. "Long time no see," he continued. Brothers Zhu. Hearing him call him that, it was so intimate. Was there anyone who didn't understand? Remnant Dream's heart was dead. The other party was strong enough, and he had so many friends. How could he deal with him? It seemed that he could only admit defeat. In just a short while, everyone on the roof had already stood up and looked around. All of them looked lonely. What a grand entrance. I thought he was going to design a beauty, but it turned out to be this guy. The crowd said in disappointment. Who's this guy? He's not even wearing his clothes. Isn't he too unrestrained? Remnant Dream was still wearing his underwear at the moment of his death. Someone immediately came to a realization. He ran onto the street with his clothes disheveled. Did he get caught in bed? No wonder it's such a grand entrance. Of course. The crowd was furious. Where's the adulterer and where's the whore? Someone shouted. I wonder who's the cuckold? The crowd looked at Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, and then at Gu Fei below. It's impossible for Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Would he have the chance to be cuckolded? The crowd laughed. It's also impossible for the one below. He has a harem of more than 50 girls. Why would he care about one or two? Someone said. You don't understand. How could a man who doesn't know how to value every girl set up a harem? Someone pretended to be a Casanova. What do you know? Do you have one? While the crowd was arguing, Sword Demon had already appeared at the end of the street. Just as Remnant Dream had expected, Sword Demon had been chasing him. However, this time, Remnant Dream was on guard and not lazy, so he didn't have the chance to attack. Seeing Sword Demon, everyone seemed to have found the truth. Wow, it's this guy. It must be. Ah, he looks like this. No wonder he was cuckolded. He's a little ugly, but he still has some temperament. But he's still a little worse than us. Of course. Fortunately, the crowd's argument only happened in the internal channel. Otherwise, the people below wouldn't even need to attack. They would vomit blood and die. It was too wretched. Chapter 250. What hope did Remnant Dream have? On his right was Gu Fei with a sword, and on his left was the Sword Demon with a dagger. Behind him was the wall, and in front of him were his two friends, who had fallen to the ground just from being pushed off the wall. On top of the wall, there were more than 10 wretched people lying in ambush. At this time, all of them were pretending to be archers, knocking their bows and aiming at Remnant Dream. What was even more annoying was that some of them were even yawning. Shooting him is so boring. Remnant Dream stared at the cocky Tsubasa Sakuratsuka on top of the wall, indignant. What's the meaning of this? He didn't have any resentment towards Gu Fei. He just felt that people like Tsubasa Sakuratsuka had to be looked down on for being so wretched. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka grinned cheekily. Do you understand what a trap is now? Just leaving it on the ground for people to step on is the worst way to go. As a trap expert, you have to study your opponent's psychology and coax them to walk into your trap. That's the essence of a trap. Shameless. Remnant Dream cursed angrily when he heard Tsubasa Sakuratsuka boasting. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka continued to grin cheekily. Brother Zhu, who is this guy? How did he offend you? Fireball asked. Oh, he's one of those guys who specializes in dropping equipment. Gu Fei introduced him to everyone. Everyone came to a realization. Their next guess was finally in line with the truth. Gu Fei or the Sword Demon had probably been dropped by this guy. Everyone was instantly enraged again. Where did you hide your equipment? Hand them all over and we'll spare your life. Tisk. Remnant Dream didn't care about his life at this point. Besides, he couldn't hand over the equipment even if they asked him to, so he acted like he didn't care. Just kill him. I'll go after him later to complete the mission, Gu Fei said. Why don't you wait at the resurrection point first? Sword Demon asked. Don't worry, I can easily catch up to him. The two of them discussed in front of Remnant Dream, completely ignoring him. Little Can, fight it out with them. Two of Remnant Dream's friends who had died were now raging. The two of them had also been teased, and seeing Remnant Dream being ridiculed by so many onlookers, they finally couldn't take it anymore. Just as Gu Fei was about to make a move, he heard Remnant Dream hurriedly say, "These two have nothing to do with us. They're just friends that I found to help out at the last minute. Come at me." Gu Fei was startled. He didn't know if Remnant Dream's words were true or false, but the two of them had already arrived in front of him. One of them charged towards the Sword Demon, while the other charged towards Gu Fei. Even if the two of them were innocent, Gu Fei and the Sword Demon couldn't just let the other party kill them. They immediately waved their weapons to defend themselves. The two of them weren't very skilled. Needless to say, Gu Fei was a great expert, and the Sword Demon was able to parry them with ease. He looked at Gu Fei and asked for his opinion. "Don't worry about me. You guys go first." Remnant Dream shouted. "If we die together." The two of them replied. Too melodramatic? Everyone thought to themselves. It was just that such a righteous melodramatic scene happened to the opponent, making it seem like they were unforgivable evil. Everyone's expression was a little unnatural. These days, the bad guys are all so loyal. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka sighed. In the end, he was looked down upon by his own brothers. "Tisk, you're not a good guy." "Yes, Yuzai is the most unloyal thing. Prioritizing hoes over friends. Forgetting friendship at the sight of profit. You're a bunch of fucking trash." Tsubasa Sakuratsuka retorted. In the end, they started to curse each other on the roof. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was alone and was obviously at a disadvantage. He was cursed by everyone. In a moment of anger, he jumped off the wall and pointed at Remnant Dream. "Let me deal with this trash." Since he couldn't win against everyone, he placed the trash on Remnant Dream, who had no resistance. Moreover, this guy saw that Remnant Dream was only wearing a shirt and pants. People without equipment were obviously easy to bully. As an archer, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka also wanted to fight in close combat. Look, this is called despicable. His brothers had already seen through his intentions and looked down on him. Gu Fei and the Sword Demon fended off Remnant Dream's two friends and didn't know what to do. Here came another troublemaker. Just as they were helpless, they suddenly heard Remnant Dream roar. "I will never die in the hands of a bitch like you." After saying that, there was a sudden flash of white light and Remnant Dream disappeared just like that. The people who were cursing on the roof quieted down. The two pairs who were fighting below also stopped. Everyone looked at the place where Remnant Dream disappeared with a look of disbelief. Teleportation scroll? Gu Fei guessed as someone who had seen big scenes. No, the teleportation light isn't like that. In fact, the Sword Demon was someone who had seen all kinds of big scenes and had mastered them as knowledge. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka obviously had a lot of gaming experience. After a long while, he said, "This seems to be the light of going offline." He forcefully went offline? Everyone was amazed. Wow, he's a man. There was a lot of discussion on the roof. It's mainly because Tsubasa is too despicable. He would rather risk the world's condemnation and forcefully go offline than die in his dirty hands. Tsk. Tsubasa, this is all because of you. Now you should know how despicable you are. Find a place to end your own life. Without a despicable person like you, Cloud City will become a paradise. Someone put his hands together and saluted. Shut the fuck up. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka roared and then looked at Gu Fei and Sword Demon. There was a questioning look in his eyes. At the same time, there was a bit of awkwardness because Remnant Dream did shout this before he died. He would rather forcefully go offline than die in the hands of Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Then let's just forget about it. The main character used this method to escape. Gu Fei and the others really had nothing to say. Remnant Dream's two dead friends were still in a daze. Suddenly, they exploded together again and pounced on Tsubasa's Sakuratsuka. Tsubasa's Sakuratsuka was obviously in a trance. He was completely unprepared. As an archer, being pounced on by two fully armed melee classes, what other outcome could there be other than death? The people who had been ridiculing Tsubasa's Sakuratsuka all roared in unison at this time. Each of them drew their bows and shot arrows at the two. However, the fastest one was still Gu Fei. He teleported in front of Tsubasa's Sakuratsuka and blocked the attack with his sword. Time was really too rushed. It was so rushed that Gu Fei didn't have time to use any tricks to resolve the opponent's attack. This defense was the first time in the game that he used his strength to resist an attack. Gu Fei already knew what would happen if he did this. In game terms, such an ordinary slash, because of the weakness in strength, Gu Fei's judgment was extremely weak. Moreover, the two of them were attacking at the same time. Gu Fei's sword couldn't stop the opponent's momentum. He could only retreat to resolve the attack. In the end, he crashed into Tsubasa's Sakuratsuka, who was behind him. Unfortunately, Tsubasa's Sakuratsuka also didn't have much strength. This crash was very fierce and urgent, and he immediately tripped and fell backward. As he fell, he reflexively reached out to grab, and in the end, Gu Fei was also knocked to the ground. Gu Fei, who was on the ground, was still staring forward, ready to receive the next attack. However, he saw countless arrows fly down from the roof and focus on the two of them. There was also a flash of fire from the sky. The two instantly turned into white light and flew away. The final attack was only a few centimeters away from the two who had fallen to the ground. The players who fought in the game every day wouldn't feel any psychological burden from killing two innocent people. Moreover, in their eyes, it was justifiable defense. At this time, everyone was looking at the street below the roof with worried expressions. However, their mouths were still chattering. Tsubasa actually didn't react just now. He really lost his composure. Could it be that today's incident hurt his weak and cowardly heart? It's over. That guy forcefully logged off was a mental attack. Tsubasa was hit. Hurry up and find a girl to heal the wound in Tsubasa's heart. Oh my, speak of the devil, the rooftop instantly fell silent. Gu Fei had just pulled Tsubasa's Sakuratsuka up to ask if he was alright. Suddenly, he felt a strange atmosphere. Turning around, he saw that there was indeed a girl who had just turned around the corner of the wall and was staring at him in a daze. When Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, who was still in a daze, saw who it was, he immediately swept away his dejected state and said with great surprise, "It's you. Why are you here?" After saying that, he rushed forward. As expected of Tsubasa, his recovery ability is S rank. The crowd discussed. You might as well say that that girl is S-rank healing medicine for Tsubasa. TSK, she appeared just in time. Is this the legendary fate? The crowd quietly looked at the street below the roof, hoping that something moving would happen. However, the girl's gaze passed through Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and fell on Gu Fei. Why are you here? What are you doing? Ah! The crowd on the roof completely went crazy. What's going on? Does every woman in Cloud City know him? Who the hell is he? Fireball, tell us, who the hell is he? The crowd shouted. DK you otakus, how can you understand how deep my brother Zue is? Fireball was extremely proud. Naturally, the people who came were vast and boundless. Gu Fei looked at her. I'm here to do something. Why you here? Hee. I told you that this is the closest way to the Archer camp's underground line. It seems that you still remember. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was proud. Vast Mang didn't say anything. She lowered her head and said, I'm leaving. After saying that, she crossed the street and continued in the direction of the Archer camp. Tsubasa, 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 Tsubasa. The crowd on the roof waved their bows and shouted. Of course. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka grinned, tidied up his equipment, and quickly chased after them. At this time, Sword Demon also quietly came to Gu Fei's side and whispered, Are they all your friends? Gu Fei looked up at the wretched men on the roof and was speechless. Chapter 251. Remnant Dream, who had forcefully logged out, still had a sliver of hope in his heart. Although the officials emphasized the possible losses that might occur when forcefully logging out, there were rumors that such losses were mainly caused by reloading. It was similar to forgetting to save when exiting a single-player game, so when the game was loaded again, it would naturally return to the previous state. At first glance, it sounded reasonable, but if it was really that simple, then it would be a huge loophole in the game. If Remnant Dream did not save after forcefully logging out, then wouldn't the equipment and level be returned to the original state after reading the data from the last time he logged out? If he transferred the equipment to someone else, forcefully logging out again, then going back online to load, wouldn't that be the way to duplicate the equipment? There were many people who could think of this, but so far, such an incident had never happened. So far in the parallel world, the occasional loopholes were due to unexpected problems caused by the first use of holographic simulation technology. Loopholes that could occur in normal games like this were extremely rare. Even so, this was the last sliver of hope in Remnant Dream's heart. After logging out for a long time, Remnant Dream logged back into the game with a nervous heart. Forcefully logging out was indeed not a simple reloading game like NSL. To put it simply, it was because the parallel world servers had to handle too many users. Unified planning and management was not only more effective, but it was also a must. The system would also save the data of these forcefully logged out users, but as the officials had said, there would be areas that were not well taken care of. What was not well taken care of was that your data would be incomplete. Incomplete meant that it was not a lot, nor was it wrong, it was just incomplete. Therefore, players would only lose items, experience, and everything that could be lost. It was impossible for them to have an extra piece of equipment out of nowhere. Perhaps their level of 30 would be mistakenly recorded as 40. Therefore, what Remnant Dream hoped for would never happen. When he re-entered the game after a while, his level and equipment were all the same as when he went offline. Reloading was just a small hope, so he was not too disappointed that it did not happen. However, his level did not drop again, which surprised Remnant Dream. Just as he thought, even if he was lucky enough not to cause any damage to the system by forcefully going offline, Gu Fei, Sword Demon, and the others were right next to him. If they killed him in passing, he would suffer at least 2 levels of damage. Remnant Dream was dead. This was the experience of previous games. For example, when someone forcefully went offline, disconnected, or lost power, the in-game character would stay in the game for a moment, waiting to be slaughtered. He didn't expect the parallel world to be so quick in this aspect. Forcefully logging out just like that, it really was a game that never got stuck if you said you wouldn't get stuck. Remnant Dream checked her level, experience, equipment, and skill mastery. She felt slightly relieved when she discovered that she hadn't lost anything. She put it back into her pocket when her expression suddenly changed. She took out her money pouch and flipped it open. Fuck you. In the end, the data loss still happened, and Remnant Dream's wallet lost a digit. He angrily kicked out, but with a puss sound, his foot was firmly caught again. Those bitches! Remnant Dream roared. They've already left, but they're still leaving traps. All of you can go to hell. Actually, this was really a misunderstanding. The trap skill of the parallel world was indeed only effective after it was activated. Before it was activated, the trap could stay in place. During this time, the trap owner could casually dismantle his own trap, but the others had to have the corresponding skills. If the trap owner set up a trap and no one stepped on it, then they had to go and dismantle it themselves. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a trap to use. Currently, everyone could only set up one trap. Remnant Dream's trap was only left behind due to the opponent's carelessness. Before he went online, White Yiruoyu was puzzled for a long time because he couldn't use the trap. His companions were just snickering at the side. At that time, each person set up a trap. Remnant Dream stepped on one, so naturally, there was one person who didn't have to dismantle it. Thus, his friends tricked White Yiruoyu into saying that it was him. Ambushers love to lie to each other like this. Their greatest joy was to see their companions throw a trap 8,000 meters away and not be able to dismantle it. Then, they would anxiously return to dismantle it. White Yi Ruoyu was the most amusing amongst them. If no one reminded him, he wouldn't be able to react for a long time. He was truly worthy of his nickname as a noob. At this time, it was almost reported to the GM as a bug. Remnant Dreams suddenly went online and destroyed the trap. White Yi Ruoyu suddenly discovered that the trap was working again and naturally thanked him profusely. It was the complete opposite of Remnant Dream cursing the opponent's entire family. From his own wanted quest, Remnant Dream knew that Gu Fei had already gone offline. At this time, Remnant Dream wasn't fantasizing about getting back the long punishing Sai. Instead, he was thinking about how to avoid the opponent. Seeing that Gu Fei wasn't there, he immediately contacted his brothers in the studio and asked them to help him clear his PK points. At this time, Remnant Dream was naked. He was level 36 and didn't have much fighting ability. When the group of brothers saw his downtrodden appearance, they also sighed and comforted him. "We'll find a chance to teach him a lesson." Everyone expressed their opinions. The people in the studio weren't normal. Compared to guilds, they were more united and disciplined. Compared to normal players, they were also more skilled. Professional players in the game were referring to people like them. Gu Fei's current performance was indeed very strong, but it wasn't enough to scare them. However, when the group of people went to the Wanted Quest office, they discovered that Remnant Dream had a wanted quest on him. It couldn't be changed. Remnant Dream was still in a daze and didn't think about it. At this time, he was thinking about how to end the long punishing Sai incident. Should he confess and ask for leniency? Remnant Dream was someone who wouldn't shed a tear until he saw the coffin. He held on to his last hope and didn't mention it for now. He ran to the jail to clear his PK points. In the end, he didn't see any news on the forums. Indeed, it was not Gu Fei's style to show off his equipment to his close friends. It was not Gu Fei's style to brag about it on the forums. Gu Fei's style was different. Just like when he helped Sword Demon snatch back Frostbite from Shi Xiaoyan's hands, Gu Fei was thinking about whether or not he should find the owner of the item and return it. In Little Ray's bar, the experts who heard Gu Fei's intentions were very surprised. The spirit of not pocketing the money found had always been equivalent to the value of the item. A guy who righteously picked up 10 yuan and returned it, would he still have the same attitude when he picked up 1,000,000 yuan? It was the same in the game. He randomly picked up 2 belts, and if someone wanted to return it, then so be it. However, there were even people who would fall out with their friends after picking up such a superb item, let alone someone like Gu Fei, who had nothing to do with the other party at all. The main problem was that Gu Fei wasn't pocketing the money he picked up. In the eyes of the experts, this was something he got back from PK. It was obviously something he earned through hard work. Even Sword Demon, who had a good character, thought so. This was the value system of the online game. Gu Fei's thoughts were very outrageous in their eyes. Who knows who this belongs to? Should we ask Remnant Dream? Brother Yu said, "That's a good idea." Gu Fei nodded. Brother Yu was speechless. In the end, he said, "What if Remnant Dream really killed this guy?" Brother Yu thought that this question could make Gu Fei hesitate for a bit, but Gu Fei's thoughts were clearly more mature than Brother Yu thought. He didn't even think before replying, "Then of course I wouldn't take it." Everyone was speechless. Even though they felt that Gu Fei was too inflexible from a human's point of view, they had to admit that his actions were very harmonious and correct. They didn't try to persuade him otherwise. Then go find Remnant Dream and ask her. Let's see if he'll tell you. Brother Yu said, "That's a bit difficult. His PK value has already been washed clean. If he could just randomly find someone, he would have been chased to the ends of the earth by now." Gu Fei said, when he had first dug up Remnant Dream's name, Brother Yu had already promoted it on the forums. At that time, everyone was filled with righteous indignation and said that they would hunt him down for the rest of their lives. The activities of Remnant Dream and the others had stagnated. It had to be said that this was one of the reasons, but in the end, no one was able to hunt him down. Even though the main city in the game wasn't as big as a city in real life, there were still hundreds of thousands of people. Trying to find a single player was extremely difficult. Just a name wasn't enough. There was no photo or address, so it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. As a result, the matter was left unsettled. Remnant Dream continued to live a comfortable life. When he first fought against Gu Fei, he was a level 40 player like everyone else. Let brother you post something. When the owner sees it, they'll contact you, Yutian Shenming suggested. That way, there will definitely be a lot of owners. Han Family Young Master said. Let them talk about the equipment stats. Apart from the owner, who can talk about it? Yutian Shenming said. The few of us, as well as Remnant Dream and the others, can all be considered youngsters who haven't seen much of the world yet. They're not good enough. Han Family Young Master mocked Yutian Shenming. Ugh, or are you saying that you want Qianli to do this, and then you'll find someone to act as the owner and get rid of him? Han Family Young Master asked. That's too despicable and shameless. Everyone exclaimed. That's what he said. I didn't think that way. Yutian Shenming pointed at Han Family Young Master. We know. Gu Fei rubbed Yutian Shenming's head. Only he could think of this method so quickly. May God bless this sinful guy so that he doesn't go to hell after he dies. Unscathed in battle pretentiously prayed for Han Family Young Master. I'm just reminding him that it's very difficult to find the owner. It's better to just take it and exchange it for alcohol. Han Family Young Master said disdainfully. I'll think of a way myself. Gu Fei got up. Butterfly knot. Students who are thinking about how to deal with the lamenting students. Your hearts are not upright enough. Hurry up and repent with all your heart. Chapter 252. Gu Fei's own method was actually to find someone. By finding this person and then finding that person, this was the simplest and most effective way to find someone. Of course, the person Gu Fei was looking for was not Death Remnant Dream. With his current relationship with Death Remnant Dream, he believed that if he wanted to go east, Death Remnant Dream would point him west. He said that he wanted to find a so-and-so, and Death Remnant Dream would tell him that so-and-so's family had died during the Ice Age. The person Gu Fei was looking for was Shi Xiaotian. Shi Xiaotian had once said that she mingled in this group and engaged in shady business, and Gu Fei had never used her as a human resource. Thinking back, he actually knew a lot of people in the game, mainly people from all over the world. Thinking of the complicated expression on the sword demon's face when he saw the wretched guys in the flower garden today, Gu Fei was silent for a long time again. He was not a person who had many friends since he was a child. Since he was a child, he had mainly focused on practicing martial arts and had never gone to a proper school. In this kind of life circle, there were almost no opportunities to meet outsiders. When he grew up, he began to come into contact with some people in the martial arts circle. But martial arts were already declining, and even a martial arts family like the Gu family rarely practiced it, let alone others. This circle was already very small. It was difficult to meet someone, even more difficult to meet someone of the same age, and it was even more difficult to meet someone of the same age and get along. Even if they met, they were all far apart, separated after a face-to-face exchange of blows. It could be said that Gu Fei had lived alone for 25 years with martial arts as his companion. Even though he was teaching in school now, he had an ordinary colleague relationship with other teachers. For Gu Fei, no one had a real common language with him. Now that it was the game, everyone had a unified common topic, the game. In addition, it was clear that the leaders of the major guilds had taken the fight for hegemony as a common language with Gu Fei, and they all used their connections to pull him into their group. There were also those who treated women as a common language, idolized Gu Fei, and hoped to learn from him. There was also the group of experts from the child elite group who had dragged him along to look down on all living things. There were also the reincarnated amethyst girls who enjoyed gossiping and joining in the fun. Gu Fei was once the core of their gossip. These were all mixed together by accident. In addition to these, there were also people like the coward's savior who could talk about martial arts with Gu Fei. Although his level was too low, he could only listen to what Gu Fei said. The two of them were like teacher and student, and there was no discussion between them. Other than that, There was Shi Xiaotian, a girl who had the same hobbies in real life as herself but was unable to display them. Although she was just using trickery, he was using kung fu, but why do these two words rhyme? Gu Fei was distracted. While he was meeting up with Shi Xiaotian, Gu Fei casually glanced at his friends list. The students were starting to come online one after another. When the last name lit up, student AFA, as the student representative, immediately began to summon Gu Fei. The other messy chatter also spread out. Bringing missions, leveling up, anything that could be brought. Money, equipment, scrolls, anything that could be given. Gu Fei could tell that these students had probably been harshly oppressed by their teachers. This was a chance to extort as much as they could. Yesterday, he gathered them together, lined them up, shouted their slogans, and marched forward. Even such an embarrassing situation could not make them back down. Are you done with your homework? Gu Fei replied indifferently. Teacher, today is the weekend. The students bared their fangs and brandished their claws. It was unknown whether they had some secret plan to use the weekend to extort Gu Fei. Gu Fei was unperturbed. He did not care much about these things in the game. After all, they were all his students. There was nothing wrong with letting them take advantage of the situation. But he had already given them all the equipment yesterday. He did not even have money. Bringing them to level up? There were more than 20 of them. There was no place for more than 20 people to level up together. As for bringing missions, there was no such thing as bringing missions. These things were mainly for running errands. If they encountered a battle that they could not win, they could ask for help. But what was the point of running errands? Oh, people like Yu Tianxinming who had a terrible sense of direction needed to be brought along. As for the others who said they would bring missions, they must be those guys like Immortal among flowers. They were using this as an excuse to pick up girls and bring them around the world. But the students were very smart. It was not practical for more than 20 people to level up together. Therefore, they were evenly divided into two groups so that Gu Fei could take turns leading them. As for how much experience Gu Fei would sacrifice to bring them to level up, they did not care. They were brazenly using the excuse of extorting their teacher. How could this be considered extortion if the other party did not suffer any losses? The teacher would not punish them to run the field for this kind of thing. Indeed, Gu Fei did not care. It was just that he had something to do. He told the students that he would be there in a while and then went to do his own things. Next to the fountain in the center of Cloud City, Gu Fei saw Shi Xiaotian. This girl was always dressed in a weird way. Gu Fei already knew that she was an archer. But at this time, she was wearing a mage robe that dragged on the ground. Underneath the robe, there seemed to be a thief's cloak. Otherwise, there was no reason to explain how the hat on her head was. Only a thief's cloak would have such a hoodie style. Gu Fei waved at her as he walked in front of her. That's rare. You actually took the initiative to find me. What's the matter? Shi Xiaotian was very straightforward. It had only been a few days since Shi Xiaotian was killed, but Gu Fei had not asked about it. How's the matter from last time? That time was a misunderstanding. Gu Fei did not help, but it was on purpose. After thinking about it, he felt a little apologetic. It's nothing. This kind of thing happens all the time. I was stabbed by someone just now. Shi Xiaotian said as she took out a piece of bread from her pocket. She slowly chewed on it, probably to replenish the life that was lost after that stab. Gu Fei was not in the mood to get involved in Shi Xiaotian's career dispute, so he directly skipped the topic. Are you still in that place? The one that dropped people's equipment. Oh, them. Their business didn't do well, so we don't have much contact anymore. But we still have some contact. I heard that you made Xiao Can very miserable yesterday. Shi Xiaotian said. He asked for it, Gu Fei said indifferently. Why are you looking for me now? Do you want to get information and continue to chase after me? Shi Xiaotian said coldly. I won't say anything. I'm just trying to make a living. Why do you have to kill me? Trying to make a living? Gu Fei didn't understand. That's their job. They're from the studio. They drop people's equipment and the boss pays them. It's that simple, Shi Xiaotian said. Oh, then it's not easy to make a living. Gu Fei said. Especially when I met you, Shi Xiaotian said. I'm really unlucky. So it's better to find another way to make a living. Gu Fei said indifferently. Looks like you're looking for me for something else. Shi Xiaotian was also a smart person. From reading between the lines, he could tell that Gu Fei didn't have any intention of upholding justice and chasing after this group of people. It's like this. When Remnant Dream died yesterday, he dropped this equipment. It's very high quality. I don't know where he dropped it from, Gu Fei said. Oh, you want to find out who the owner is and return it? Gu Fei nodded. You're really too noble. Standing here, I feel like I'm a microbe. Shi Xiaotian's words contained ridicule, but his face was expressionless. Gu Fei couldn't figure out what he was thinking. What is it? What is it? Shi Xiaotian asked. There were 2 daggers. Gu Fei casually took one and handed it over. Shi Xiaotian took it and looked at it. Now that the dagger is in my hand, aren't you afraid that I'll run? No. Gu Fei's other hand held the sword. It's useless to kill me. The item is still on me, Shi Xiaotian said. Then run. Gu Fei said. Shi Xiaotian didn't move and handed the dagger back. I've never seen this equipment before. Gu Fei was puzzled. But he also knew that there was no need for Shi Xiaotian to hide anything. If I'm not wrong, I'm afraid only Little can explain the origin of this equipment. Shi Xiaotian said. What do you mean? Gu Fei asked. I'm confident that I know all the equipment they got, but I've never seen this set of green letters. Someone must have hidden it. Since you said that Remnant Dream died, then he must have hidden it. Shi Xiaotian said. So he's the only one who knows who dropped it? Yes. Also, it's very likely that this item was dropped by someone else. They're a professional robber group. They must have targeted someone with a high-quality item and then purposely dropped it. Under these circumstances, how could such an unknown equipment be hidden? Shi Xiaotian said. Maybe they didn't know at first, but it fell out when they died? Gu Fei said. This kind of high-quality equipment, why wouldn't they use it? If they couldn't use it, they would either auction it or store it safely in the warehouse. Why would they keep it in their pockets? Shi Xiaotian said. That makes sense. Then what do you mean? Maybe they were fighting a boss, or during a mission, they accidentally dropped it and Little can hid it. I don't think I need to explain his motive. Understood. Gu Fei nodded. So, if you want to talk about the owner of this item, it can only be Little Can. Do as you see fit. Shi Xiaotian said. Then I'm the owner now. Tsk. Gu Fei looked at the dagger in his hand. You got lucky? Then I'm leaving. See you tomorrow. Shi Xiaotian said. Tomorrow? Gu Fei was puzzled. Isn't tomorrow the mercenary group finals? Oh? You're in the Black Hand mercenary group? Gu Fei was surprised. You have to be careful. I'm very despicable. Shi Xiaotian stretched out his hand and made a shooting gesture to Gu Fei, then turned and walked away. Despicable. Gu Fei was silent. Butterfly not. The whole world is talking about the outbreak. I'm surrounded by the outbreak. Where will the butterfly go? Is this a suspense? Chapter 253. After Shi Xiaotian left, Gu Fei ignored the urging of the students and slowly went to complete a few more wanted missions. The quest that he received from Remnant Dream's death ended up failing because Remnant Dream's PK points had already been erased. Gu Fei's progression was interrupted once again. Who knew how long it would take for him to complete the quest 200 times in a row? Gu Fei, who was on his way to the wanted mission office, was blocked by someone on the street. Due to the increasing number of players in the game, all kinds of trends were spreading like mushrooms after a spring rain. The act of blocking Gu Fei was a new entertainment item. Everyone knew that it was easy to drop equipment after death with PK points. Therefore, after receiving a PK mission, some people did not come to complete it. Instead, they invited 3 to 5 friends to find the person and kill them. It was extremely sinister. It was Gu Fei's first time encountering this item. Although he often did wanted missions, it had been a while since he had PK points. Today's PK points were just in time for a small group that liked to come out on weekends for entertainment. More than a dozen PK points. This was going to explode all over the place. After receiving the mission, the few of them came to him excitedly. As soon as they saw Gu Fei, they used appraisal. They did not appraise the clothes. Gu Fei put the sword in his pocket, but the shoes made them drool. After sizing up the goods, the few of them nodded in satisfaction. They glared at Gu Fei and shouted, "Stop! Want admission?" They learned this style from Gu Fei. He was outstanding in the PK ranking and wanted mission world in Cloud City. Gu Fei was startled. He didn't know the purpose of this group of people, and he really thought that they were pure and kind people. Gu Fei did not want to make things difficult for these guys who had the same hobby as him. He did not fight them and turned to run. "Hurry!" The group shouted. Then, they saw Gu Fei gradually disappear from their sight. "Damn, that's too fast. Those shoes are too awesome." Someone exclaimed. "Motherfucker, I already said that we could have just chopped them down. Why are you always making a fuss? What's the point of doing that?" Someone was dissatisfied. "Keep going. There's no way he can clear his PK record so quickly." The few of them continued chasing after Gu Fei. Gu Fei ran into a few people from time to time while doing his wanted tasks. Gu Fei's movement speed was too fast. When the others arrived at his coordinates and chased after him, all they could see was his back. There were even more pitiful times when they finally caught up to Gu Fei and saw that he had just finished off his target. Just as they were about to attack excitedly, Gu Fei smiled at them and disappeared. "What's going on? What's going on?" The few of them scratched their heads and continued to chase after the coordinates. In the end, after Gu Fei had washed himself clean of PK, the few of them were out of breath from running. They couldn't even get within 30 meters of Gu Fei. Gu Fei, who had no more PK points, came to them cheerfully and recited a poem with a smile. "We were born of the same root. Why rush to torture each other?" Gu Fei meant that everyone was doing a PK mission, so there was no need to get entangled with each other. When the few of them heard this, they immediately came to a realization. Fuck, so it's also a robbery. No wonder his PK points are so high. Since they were in the same line of work, forget it. The few of them thought this way and smiled at Gu Fei. "Let's work together if there's a chance." This was just a formality. For them, this activity was directly related to the distribution of benefits, so it was done by a few close friends. They didn't want to add an irrelevant person to compete with them for food. Gu Fei thought that he alone was enough for this mission. Cooperation? There was really no need for that. But since the other party had invited him, he had to respond politely. So he just nodded perfunctorily. At first glance, the two sides seemed to have a tacit understanding. The group of people couldn't help but think, as expected, he knows this well. The moment he heard about cooperation, he came up to make us sworn brothers. That's a guy with no inner qualities. After that, the two sides tacitly went their own ways. On Gu Fei's side, the messages in his friend list were about to explode. They were all from students urging him to come. Ignoring messages was a skill that Gu Fei had learned when he was reincarnated into Amethyst. He wasn't afraid no matter how many messages came. At this time, he calmly looked through them one by one and randomly picked one to reply. "I'm coming." Outside of Cloud City, the students were divided into two teams, training painfully. Cloud Suburb Farm used to be the most hellish training area around Cloud City. Now that there were more players, the situation naturally didn't change. Fortunately, there were high and low levels among the students of Ultimate Class 3. For example, IFA's level was enough to bully the people training in Cloud Suburb Farm. So, they quickly fought for two training areas using Cloud City's 1v1 rules. But the problem now was that things weren't the same as before. The experienced players in the game would find a powerful boss to back them up. Just like how the students of Ultimate Class 3 relied on AFA, who was obviously one level higher, to come to Cloud Suburb Farm to bully others for territory. Soon, the bullied guy would summon his boss, who was level 40, to come back and bully AFA. The process didn't need to be described. Just like how AFA bullied a guy over level 20, the other party made AFA surrender in no time. The training area was naturally snatched back, and the students of Ultimate Class 3 naturally had to go to other places to fight for more. In the end, after AFA was done bullying others, there would always be someone stronger coming to bully AFA. When Gu Fei arrived, AFA had just been stabbed half to death by a level 40 thief. A group of people sat on the embankment by the roadside, sighing, strongly condemning AFA as a good-for-nothing. Gu Fei's appearance made the students feel as if they had seen the light at the end of the tunnel. They cried and screamed as they surrounded Gu Fei and complained. Gu Fei nodded in understanding and waved his hand. "Line up, let's go somewhere else." The students' thoughts were more simple. They only felt that it was cool and refreshing to be bullied back after being bullied. Changing to another place to escape was too unmanly. But in the face of Gu Fei's threat of running 8 laps, they didn't voice any opinions even though they were unwilling. The students silently lined up. Their morale was relatively low. Originally, they thought that Gu Fei would come and help them vent their frustrations. Who would have thought that he would run away with his tail between his legs? This was really adding another stroke to their frustrations. The students lined up, and under the personal guidance of Gu Fei, they followed behind him listlessly. At this time, the road was getting further and further away. AFA, who had some gaming knowledge, was staring with wide eyes. He could finally see that this leveling area was getting higher and higher. Both Cloud Valley and Cloud Valley had monsters that were level 40. Gu Fei didn't dare to lead them any further. After all, the students' levels were far lower than Amethyst's. They wouldn't be of much use in the level 50 leveling area. Although Gu Fei could handle it alone, the efficiency would be too low. Right now, they were leveling, not playing. Efficiency had to be taken into consideration, and Gu Fei was more considerate. The level 40 leveling area was also more crowded. Gu Fei led the team into the valley and randomly found a piece of land. He went up to negotiate with someone, dueled, and easily won the territory. If they fought for 2 pieces of land, it would still be slightly crowded with more than 20 students, but no matter how much land there was, Gu Fei wouldn't be able to handle it alone. After that, he arranged for the lower-level students to sit at the side. The higher-level students would attract the monsters, and the capable ones would also help fight. After that, it was Gu Fei's shocking performance of killing monsters in seconds. Not only were the students in admiration, but the surrounding players were also shocked. For a moment, the students felt extremely proud. Although the levels of the students were all over the place and the distribution of experience was also messy, the efficiency of the experience was still gratifying. Especially for the lower-level students, their needs and rewards were completely out of proportion. Their experience was increasing at an insane rate. The students cheered and were pleasantly surprised. Just as they were in high spirits, Gu Fei suddenly stopped and ordered the students, "Line up." "What's going on?" The students were puzzled. "It's past 9, you should go offline," Gu Fei said. "Ah!" The students shouted. "Teacher, today is the weekend, play more." In fact, many students came with the desire to play all night. "It's the weekend," Gu Fei murmured. "Then let's play until 9:30. Ah. Some students looked at the time and continued to shout. "It's already 9:27. "Yes, that's why I'm giving you preferential treatment, because it's the weekend. At 9:30, it'll take a lot of time to go back to the city and go offline. I'll give you some free time, disappear at 10 o'clock. Gu Fei said. "Ah." The students shouted in vain, but they didn't dare to object. Did you dare? If you dared, try running 8 laps in the next PE class. The students of the Ultimate Class 3 suddenly realized something. The teacher should be someone that the students couldn't hide from. They shouldn't take the initiative to get in front of the teacher. Even if they were playing the game, the teacher was still the teacher, and the students were still the students. The essence couldn't be changed. It was possible for both sides to abandon their identities in the game and not know each other, like Gu Fei and Yutian Shinming. But the students of the Ultimate Class 3 and Gu Fei had a real teacher-student relationship. This wasn't something that could be changed by playing a game. Even if there were teachers who would put down their airs because of this, the Ultimate Class 3 knew that it wasn't likely to happen to teacher Gu Fei. Although he was just a PE teacher, Gu Fei was relatively serious. Physical education was a subject that wasn't very important, so the results were always relatively casual. If you didn't reach the standard, the teacher would help you improve it to the standard. Only Gu Fei did things according to the rules and was meticulous. Everyone took the initiative to get close to such a teacher. They were really blinded by lard. But the problem was that they were already close, so they couldn't escape even if they wanted to. Speaking of which, Teacher Gu treated everyone well, except for the limited time they had to play. After the group vented in the guild channel, they asked Gu Fei pitifully, "Teacher, are we still coming here to level up tomorrow?" "Tomorrow? I might not be able to tomorrow. I have to go to the finals of the mercenary competition tomorrow." Gu Fei looked into the distance. Butterfly knot. The finals are finally coming. Chapter 254. It was Saturday, and the finals were coming. Everyone was making the best use of their time to enrich themselves. Those who were just a little bit away from leveling up were making the best use of their time. Those who were just a little bit away from leveling up were making the best use of their time. The simplest and most direct way was to obtain a godly weapon before the competition. This would undoubtedly increase their strength by leaps and bounds. There was such a piece of equipment in the child elite group. Without a doubt, it was a piece of equipment that was above its level. Furthermore, it was a green word set. Gu Fei had claimed that he was going to return it to the owner, but after going around in circles, he said that the owner of the dagger was Remnant Dream, so it belonged to him now. The experts did not say anything. Because Gu Fei had a bad record of being two-faced in the child elite group, they did not see him as an upright and promising young man. Now that he had done this, beast in human clothing. Sanctimonious. Everyone was chewing over these words in their hearts. Of course, no one would spit it out. Gu Fei's sword was on the table. It was very handy. This long execution and short sigh doesn't seem to be of any use to me. Gu Fei sighed. He had been fiddling with this thing for some time. Look. Gu Fei stretched out his right hand, holding the long execution. Even the green light isn't very bright. This means that I haven't even met the requirement for my coefficient. Gu Fei was experienced in this aspect. His night streamer was the same. Although they were both purple pieces of equipment, the color of the physical attack attribute was on a completely different level from the magic attack attribute. One look and one would think that the magic attack was more dazzling. This was a hint from the system, using the brightness of the color to vaguely remind the player that their coefficient was not enough. The situation with the long execution was more serious. Not only was its attack color dim, but even its additional attributes were not completely green. It was obvious that it was not fully activated. As he spoke, Gu Fei stretched out his left hand, holding the short sigh. This is even better. Apart from the word, short sigh, the rest are all dark. Is it because I don't have any dual-wielding skills that I can't use it? The experts looked from his left hand to his right hand, then back to his left hand. In the end, they scolded in unison, "What are you looking at? If you can't appraise it, put it on the table." His appraisal skill could not keep up with the demand for high-grade equipment. If you wanted to see its attributes, you either had to obtain it yourself, or the owner would set up a stall to publicize its attributes. Everyone asked Gu Fei to place it on the table, meaning to announce it in the manner of a stall. Gu Fei was even bolder. He directly threw the two daggers on the table and gestured for everyone to take a look. The experts picked it up one by one and tried to play with it. They even compared it with each other. Hey, look at mine. It's pretty green, right? It's not as green as mine. Watch me take it. Mine is the greenest. Gu Fei resisted the urge to explode. Didn't you just say that you couldn't identify it in your hands? Now tell me, why are they comparing it to green now? Sword Demon's personality was not as proactive as the others. Finally, the two daggers were passed to him. He picked one up and looked at it. He nodded. Very green. He picked up another one and looked at it again. It's also very green. Then he picked up two, looked at his left hand and nodded. This hand is not green. Looks like it needs both hands. Unscathed in battle was proud. After snatching it from Sword Demon's hand, he said proudly, "I can make both of them green. Is it green enough?" Gu Fei finally couldn't take it anymore and was ready to flip the table. "No, it's not enough." Unscathed in battle still shook his head. "I'm sure it's not as green as Sword Demon's." The passive skill that warriors had at level 12 was called Weapon Mastery. It had a very wide range. All swords, axes, and spears were added, but daggers, bows, and arrows were not. Therefore, in terms of the coefficient of daggers, Sword Demon was definitely the best. "I don't know if it's fully activated." Sword Demon shook his head. It was the first time that the experts had seen green equipment. No one knew how green it would be when the coefficient was fully reached. In the end, he turned to look at Unscathed in battle. "Have you activated your dark attribute?" Unscathed in battle was dejected. "Looks like it needs to reach the coefficient completely," Sword Demon concluded. "Let's not talk about reaching the coefficient first. That requires both hands. Other than Berserker, who else has two-handed skills?" Yutian Shunming reminded everyone. Sword Demon was silent for a while before saying, "Thieves can also have it if they change their profession to assassin, but they need a skill scroll to learn it." Gu Fei asked, "Can sorcerers do it?" "This shouldn't be possible, right?" Everyone looked at each other. Gu Fei's question sounded like an idiot's question, but no one dared to pat their chest and make a guarantee. Because this question was so stupid that no one had ever studied it before. It lacked practical basis. "I don't think so." Gu Fei still knew some of the rules of the game. He sighed and waved his hand. "Then Sword Demon will take it." Based on their understanding of Gu Fei, they had already expected that if he couldn't use the dagger himself, it would definitely benefit Sword Demon in the end. Their eyes were so red that they were about to bleed. Imperial Sky Divine Ming sighed with emotion, "When will you be able to get a bow back?" He had just changed his bow as well, and was still admiring it a few days ago. However, this person was afraid of comparison. Good and bad were relative. Compared to Long Zhu and Short Sai, even if they were stripped of their entire bodies, they would still be inferior. Sword Demon's expression was a bit awkward. He wasn't a hypocritical person. He really wanted this Sword Demon, so he didn't have any intention of declining. But it didn't seem good to just accept it. It seemed a bit difficult to ask for money. At the end of the day, his relationship with Gu Fei was at a point where they were neither close nor close. It made it difficult for Sword Demon to make a decision. On the other hand, Yutian Shunming didn't know whether it was intentional or not. He looked at Sword Demon and muttered, "If this thing is sold, it should be worth at least 2,000 gold coins, right? 2,000 gold coins? Yutian, you're too conservative." "Brother," you said with a look of an expert. "This dagger is obviously of a higher level. You can't use the current market to evaluate it. If it's sold separately, I'm afraid Sword Demon's damage is more advantageous now. It can be sold for more than 1,000. Sword Demon's damage isn't so outstanding, but it's still at the level of a first-class dagger. It can be sold for around 800. Now that the two are together, it's attached with fatality and skills. The price of a skill weapon has always doubled, so it can be sold for at least 3,000. The two had already discussed the price. How could Sword Demon turn a deaf ear to them? He immediately said to Gu Fei, "Then I'll buy it for 3,000. But I don't have money right now. I have to owe it first." Gu Fei smiled and said, "We're so familiar with each other. Why are you so serious? Just give me 800 or 1,000 as a gesture." 800 or 1,000 is considered a gesture. You're really arrogant. Why don't you say it's for free? Yutian Shunming shouted. He felt that when Sword Demon said he wanted to pay, Gu Fei declined. This matter was settled with a sense of brotherhood and everyone was happy. How could he really ask for it? What does a kid know? Go play at the side. Gu Fei waved his hand. Sword Demon was very pleased with this. Then let's make it cheaper. Just give me 2,000 gold. I said 800 or 1,000, so it's 1,800 gold. Gu Fei said. Sword Demon knew that the 800 or 1,000 that Gu Fei said was not an imaginary number, but a real number. It was really hypocritical to push and shove for 200 gold. Sword Demon immediately nodded without hesitation. In the end, he said, I don't have 1800. I have to owe it first. And no hurry. Gu Fei said plainly. The person involved had no objections, but Yutian Shenming seemed to be unable to stand it. He put his hand into his pocket and threw a scroll on the table. He slapped the table and looked at Gu Fei. Lightning element scroll, I'll sell it to you for 1800 gold. How about? Okay. Gu Fei happily picked it up from the table. He pulled the scroll and said, I also don't have money, but I still owe it. One hand for the money. Yutian Shenming hadn't even finished speaking when he saw a lightning-like light fly between Gu Fei's fingers and disappear in an instant. The scroll was already wrinkled like a piece of toilet paper. Gu Fei rubbed it casually and it immediately crumbled. How could the experienced and knowledgeable experts not know that the scroll had already been used? They were all dumbfounded and admired Gu Fei's straightforwardness. Yutian Shenming was like a fool. The words he wanted to say just now were stuck in his throat. He then muttered, It's already been used? The end of his voice was raised, showing his disbelief. And it's been used. I'll return it to you when I have money. Gu Fei said, Aiya. Yutian Shenming was about to pounce over when Gu Fei hurriedly said, See you at the teleportation formation. He flashed out of the private room. Yutian Shenming didn't give up and chased after him. But no matter how fast he couldn't be faster than Gu Fei's teleportation. When he rushed out of the tavern, there were many forks in the streets. He didn't know where Gu Fei had gone. Imperial Sky Shenming angrily returned to the private room, only to see Sword Ghost playing with the long slash and short side daggers with a look of longing on his face. He was probably fantasizing about the beautiful scene of both daggers being activated. Sword Demon, you don't have to pay. Just think of it as me exchanging the scroll for you. Yutian Shenming walked into the private room and patted Sword Demon's shoulder generously. The Sword Ghost just smiled and said, That's not it. How can it be? Qianli is too ungrateful. Yutian Shenming sat on the side gloomily with an expression of, I've misjudged you. He's thinking for me. He doesn't want me to owe him anymore. Sword Demon said lightly. Yutian Shenming didn't understand for a moment. It's easy to return money, but it's hard to return a favor. Sword Demon sighed. It varies from person to person. Brother, you said, Qianli's style of doing things varies from person to person. He knows Sword Demon's style of doing things, so he did it this way. As for Yutian, Yutian, I think it's better if you just forget about your scroll. Chapter 255. Yutian Shenming listened to their explanations for Gu Fei and felt relieved. As for his scroll, since he didn't have any complaints about Gu Fei, he didn't really care about the money. Brother, you was right. Gu Fei's individualized strategy was very successful. Gu Fei, who had run away from the tavern, was also looking at the skill's introduction, Electric Wall. Manipulates powerful lightning magic to create an electric barrier that blocks everything. Lasts for 20 seconds. Block everything. The system's explanation had always been full of boasting. The fireball spell was said to drive the magical power of fire to burn everything. Gu Fei didn't pay much attention to it. He pointed and chanted, Electric Wall, descend. Lightning spells were indeed lightning spells. Gu Fei's descent of the heavenly fire wheel was definitely not as fast as this. As soon as he finished chanting, the air in the direction of his finger suddenly convulsed. The players passing by were also shocked by this strange change. Then, there was a series of crackling sounds, and a twisted net made of fine electric currents appeared in front of him. From time to time, there would be sparks flashing, and the net was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. In terms of visual impact, lightning was much stronger than fire and water. It was too dazzling. This electric wall was more than 3 meters wide, but it didn't block the street in front of them. But the players passing by stopped and looked curiously at this skill that they had never seen before. Some of the more daring ones even went closer and touched it with their fingers. With a bang, sparks flew between his fingers and the electric wall. The player let out a strange cry and retracted his finger. He looked at his status and shouted, Damn, numb. Amidst everyone's amazement, after 20 seconds, the skill disappeared. Only then did everyone realize that they hadn't noticed who had used the skill. When they looked around, Gu Fei had already left. "So draining!" Gu Fei exclaimed. Just now, the electric wall had drained half of his magic. And he was very familiar with the feeling of holding back. It was the same as when he used teleportation. In other words, players could increase their mana consumption to increase the effect of skills. Take instant movement, for example. The amount of mana consumed would affect the distance traveled. As for Fireball and Heaven's Descending Flame Wheel, they didn't increase the amount of mana consumed to increase the damage, nor did Lightning. It seemed that this was just a special characteristic of some special spells. Gu Fei pondered the characteristics of this spell and thought about how it could be combined with Kung Fu. At the same time, he headed towards the teleportation portal in the direction of the mercenary building. 7 o'clock arrived in the blink of an eye, and everyone who participated in the mercenary confrontation had already arrived at the teleportation array. Today was not only the final between Child Elite Group and Black Hand Mercenary Group. Against the Currents Waterflower Mercenary Group would also compete with Rainbow Cloud for third place. In fact, the battle for third place was even more intense than the finals between Child Elite Group and Black Hand Mercenary Group. This was because the system stipulated that only the top 3 would receive a special reward. In other words, no matter who won or lost between Child Elite Group and Black Hand Mercenary Group, they would not be able to escape this reward. It was just a difference in level. On the other hand, between Waterflower Mercenary Group and Rainbow Cloud Mercenary Group, the loser would not get anything. When the Han family young master and the others arrived, they met against the Currents group. Everyone maintained their usual harmony, working hard, fighting hard, and cheering each other on. After saying their goodbyes, they were teleported to the pre-battle map. Before the battle, it was usually the other party's intelligence report. However, Black Hand Mercenary Group was really low-key, which made Brother Yu feel a little awkward. Without intelligence, he had become unprecedentedly low-key in this mercenary group. This Black Hand Mercenary Group has a total of 100 people, and their levels are all quite high. To say that they are not as good as the 4 Seas Mercenary Group would be underestimating them. After becoming the number 1 mercenary group in the system, they have now begun to expand some player missions. As far as I know, they are very professional in terms of missions, have a fair price, and have a good reputation. What Brother Yu said couldn't be considered intelligence, but the problem was that it had limited value in terms of actual combat. The intelligence that was needed in actual combat was the exact distribution of the other party's professions, the status of their experts, and their usual fighting style. It would be best if they had some understanding of the personalities of some key people. The Han family young master's tactics seemed to be improvised, but in reality, they were all arranged according to the intelligence he had gathered. Take the battle against the Waterflower Mercenary Group as an example. It was an opponent of nearly 80 people, but that battle could be said to have been won without any suspense. Everything was under control, and that was because the Han family young master was very familiar with that group. However, Brother Yu is indeed worthy of being called the king of intelligence. From the limited intelligence he had, he was able to analyze some things. From the way they handle things, this mercenary group is undoubtedly very cohesive. It is very likely that they will explode with explosive power that we have never seen before, so we should be cautious. This is the finals, so let's all fight seriously. Brother Yu said. Brother Yu, what are you saying? Yutian Shunming said unhappily, we have always given our all. Do you think this is a shonen manga? Only when we are beaten half to death will we shout, I'll show you my true strength. We have already tried our best. Yes, that's the spirit. Continue to work hard. Since the intelligence is not enough. The Han family young master who had been silent finally spoke. Then let's start gathering information after the battle starts. Qianli, Yutian, Sword Demon, your speed advantage should be absolutely obvious. When the battle starts, the 3 of you should approach them first and see if there is anything you can use. The 3 of them nodded. The 3 of us will first strategize in the back. Han family young master said. Don't drag me into this, I am just a bodyguard. Unscathed in battle said angrily. Refresh, refresh all agility warriors. Yutian Shenming said to him sympathetically. Get lost. While they were laughing and scolding, the countdown started. Brother, you quickly noticed a phenomenon. And not all of them are here. 87 people. They are missing 13. Oh, that's normal. This is just a game. Everyone expressed their understanding. If it was really a big event, people who understood the situation would put the game aside. The final match officially began. According to the official announcement, the map for the final match was specially made, but in reality, what could be done with this map? The scenery had indeed changed a lot, but no one was here to enjoy the scenery. In the eyes of the young master of the Han family, that beautiful and majestic peak was a good place to have a bird's eye view of the entire map. The river that seemed to have dried up after being washed by the river was a good route for him to advance secretly. There were also the twin trees that looked like twins. The two trees were separated by more than 60 coordinates. What the hell was the point of making them the same? The Han family young master roughly studied the terrain in front of him and pointed at the mountain. Go there. Taking the high ground again. Everyone was bored. It was like this every time. They were numb. Oh, it's there. The Han family young master pointed and walked away. They didn't see where he was pointing, but their intuition told them that it was the direction of the mountain. The 6 of them advanced at full speed. They didn't find any enemies along the way and finally arrived at the place that the Han family young master pointed at. The majestic mountain was in front of them. The 6 of them were only tens of meters away from the bottom of the mountain. The Han family young master looked around and pointed at a small forest at the bottom of the mountain. Over there. The 5 of them followed him into the forest. They still couldn't figure out what he was planning. Didn't you want us to gather information? Gu Fei couldn't hold back anymore. He wanted to gather information. If it was convenient, he could kill a few of them. That would be great. No hurry, the information will come to us. Keep an eye on it, the Han family young master said. Keep an eye on what? This map is obviously about taking the high ground. That's why there's such a perfect mountain like mine. If it's a fight between 2 groups with similar strength, this high ground will be the key to victory. They will definitely come here. The Han family young master said. Similar strength? Do we count? Brother, you wasn't confident. The Han family young master smiled. Of course not. But because we have the big kiting strategy. To deal with this strategy, it's necessary to take the high ground. They will definitely come. I didn't expect your big kiting strategy to have so many foreshadowing. Brother, you sighed. Then let's wait and see. Then let's peep from here. Let's disguise ourselves. Waiting had always been boring. Imperial Sky Shenming casually plucked some twigs and leaves, weaving a straw hat. He admired it for a moment. Feeling that it was not bad, he placed it on his head and asked the others, "Do you guys want one?" No one paid attention to him. The 5 of them were completely immersed in their own world. Sword Demon had 3 daggers. 2 of them were Long Slash and the other one was Frostbite's memory. He was probably thinking about how to use them when the battle started. The Han family young master looked out of the forest from time to time. He took out a bottle of wine from his pocket and drank it slowly. Brother Yu's expression was the most focused. His eyes stared at the forest without blinking. His left hand held a small notebook, and his right hand that held a pen contained infinite explosive power. No one would doubt that when the information appeared, his hand could explode with an agility of 1,000 points. As for unscathed in battle, it wasn't easy to hide in the forest due to his large size. He tried his best to lower his body and squatted behind a big tree. He would occasionally tilt his head and look out. He looked like someone hiding in a corner to take a dump. The last one was Gu Fei. He was dressed in a black robe. It was not easy to spot him in the dark forest. He propped his sword with both hands. His eyes were cold and his face was expressionless. It could be summed up in one word: murderous. Everyone is so serious. Imperial Sky Divine Ming could not help but be infected by the heavy atmosphere. He adjusted the straw hat on his head, opened his eagle eyes wide, and stared straight out. He's here. The first to discover the target was not Imperial Sky Shinming, who had the eagle eyes, but the Han family's young master. He waved his hand and pointed. Everyone had to turn their heads. Everyone was looking in the wrong direction. Outside the forest, the Black Hand mercenaries quietly passed through the gap between the two mountains and came to the foot of the peak. Is everyone here? Han family young master asked Yutian Shenming. I'll count. Yutian Shenming began to rub his eyes. Even with the eagle eyes, this was not an easy job. Butterfly knot. Everyone, please wait in the forest with the elites. You can choose your hiding method. You can stand like Gu Fei, or you can squat behind a tree like Uncle Wushang. Bring your own toilet paper. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.